We are recording. Are we on channel 79? Okay. Welcome to the Town of New Canaan Town Council, which is being held in the Town Hall Meeting Room, regular meeting, and also a virtual meeting, a Zoom meeting with meeting ID 842-1004-6647 with passcode 532384. This is a virtual hybrid meeting, and those wishing to participate in the meeting may attend in person or connect to Zoom. And I've given you that instructions, and it is 7 o'clock, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to introduce Cub Scout 70 will lead us in the pledge. Griff Quigley, raise your hand. And Michael McMurray. All right. And Ben Morales. All right. So are you ready to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All rise. Face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The council can take our seats, and no, boys, I'd like to hear a little bit. We'd all like to hear a little bit about Cub Scout troop. Is it Pack 70? Would Griff like to start and tell us a little bit about the troop? Close to the microphone.
Well, I don't really just something about the
He'll go first.
I don't really know about what do you mean by what do we explain about it?
Whatever he misses, you can fill in the gaps.
So I joined Pack 17 not long ago, and Pack 70 not long ago, and I haven't got much badges, as you can see, and I do not really put them on. And we normally have different campouts along the year.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
I joined Pack 70 when I was in second grade. Just the year I moved to New Canaan. And actually, it was the year after, or the school year after. Yeah, the year the coronavirus started. Actually, no, the year before coronavirus, 2018, I think. Was it? Yeah, and I joined mainly because I thought it would be fun, and it was. And so far, it has been fun. And so currently, I'm pretty sure we're doing the popcorn event. We're selling popcorn, and then there's certain prizes that we can get depending on how much money we earn for the pack. So
you're selling popcorn to earn for the troop, and with the money you earn, with the pack, and with the money you earn, you can go on camping trips.
I don't really know what it funds for. Well, sometimes
Probably camping trips. Have you been able to go on any camping trips this year?
I've been on one, which was pretty recently. Wait, wasn't there another? So there's been two. Okay. I was only there on the most recent one. So in the most recent one, it was raining very hard somehow, and I was actually the first person to roast marshmallows that night when it was pouring. And just the first person to roast marshmallows, I think.
Sometimes we don't let a little weather get in the way.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm surprised it didn't get super wet. Because the only reason it wasn't wet when I was probably roasting it was because the fire, I put it in the fire, not on the fire, so it didn't.
How did you earn those 3 badges? Do you have to do service works?
Since I joined in for Wolf, I needed to get the Pledge of Allegiance, Cub Scout Oath, and Cub Scout Law. Is that all? Okay. To earn the Bobcat badge, because that was the first mandatory one, right? Well, the first one that I earned, I guess. And then I got Wolf that year as well, because I was in Wolf, and then I did the requirements. And then I got Bear last year. And then this year I'm in Webelow. All of us are in Webelow. Oh. And that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna say one more thing about the camp out. I think we were the pack that had the least number of people camping. We had 4 kids camping.
So this is a recruitment drive. You'd like to see more kids join the pack
Stay overnight.
and stay overnight. Okay,
Camp out.
it's important. Does,
Didn't stay overnight. I was going to not stay overnight. But then I did. Yeah.
so Ben, would you like to say a few words? Come up to the microphone. What grade are you in, Ben?
I'm in 4th grade.
4th grade. You have a lot of badges.
We're all in 5th grade.
I've earned all of these badges over my 4 or 5 years of scouting.
4 or 5 years. That's a lot of badges. It's very impressive. Have you learned to make fire? Not yet?
Sort of.
Sort of?
I was the first person to make fire with flint and steel my first camp out. I think the first person in mostly the entire pack. Or at least the first school. I don't know.
So anything else you want to tell us, Ben?
Well, the hard part about camping in the rain.
Camping in the rain?
The rain's very noisy.
Yes.
Hard to sleep.
Sure is. Sometimes the rain leaks through the tent and some water got into our tent. So
There was once a time in my life when I had to camp out in the desert, and I wish I had some of those badges, and I wish I had some of those skills that you guys are learning now in the Cub Scouts. It would have come in handy. So thanks for coming here and leading the pledge, and good luck to Pack 70. And I hope you get some more members so you have a bigger camp out next time. Thanks, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Okay, now we have the roll call. Rich?
Okay, Penny Young,
Here.
Steve Carl,
Here.
John Engel,
Here.
Sven England, Christina Ross,
Here.
Tom Butterworth,
Here.
Liz Donovan, not here, Rich Townsend, here, Mike Morrow, Robin Bates Mason,
Here.
Mark Jimsky,
Here.
Maria Naughton.
Here.
You have 11, you have 10, 12, you have a quorum.
I have a quorum. Then the meeting is called to order. Would Vice Chairman Sven like to do the next item on the agenda?
What, the minutes?
Yeah, that's what it
Oh,
says.
fine. So we have 3 sets of minutes. Yep. We have the combined meeting with Board of Selectmen, Town Council, Board of Finance from September 29th. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? None appearing. All in favor of approving as written, raise your right hand. It's unanimous. The next set of minutes is the regular meeting of September 22nd. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? None appearing. All those in favor of approving as written, raise your right hand. Again, it's unanimous. The last one,
Actually, Sven, I wasn't there, so should I abstain or?
we'll take it
Okay.
as a valid.
I
vote.
agree with what's written, so.
The last one we have are the minutes of the public hearing of October 5. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? None appearing. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you all. It's again unanimous. Tucker.
Sven, that was very smooth. I think you might have missed your calling. Are you sure you don't want to stay on maybe a few more years on the town council and perfect what you've clearly mastered? Excellent. Public comments. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the town council on agenda topics scheduled for review and or a vote. Speakers are requested to provide their name and street address, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes, subject to the total number of speakers. Is there anybody who would like to address the council?
Question, is this for specific agenda? Comments?
It's supposed to be, but we have we have so many committee reports, so we can basically take that liberally, so it depends.
Okay, I just came, I'm happy to get up.
Would you can sit at this table right here?
This table here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Or stand, either way.
You mind if I've been sitting all day? so-
Yeah, but no one's gonna see him over there.
Okay, I'll sit here, it's fine. Thanks. My name is Rich Delaquilla. I live at 74 Kelly Green. I was just calling, visiting, because I had submitted a letter to town council as well as the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, to Tiger Manager Jen Allison. And so I didn't have any specific requests tonight, but given that there's a lot going on in town and I understand there are full agendas all around, I just wanted to show my face and see if there's anything else I can do to engage in the discussion around that letter, whether it's now or in the future.
So I remember the letter, but for the people who haven't seen it, do you want to, why don't you summarize it? Because you'll do a better job than I did.
Sure. So Kelly Green is located in town off of Woodland Avenue, off of South. There are, I believe there are 14 homes on Kelly Green. We are, it's 1/3 acre zoning. Many of the lots, or some of the lots, are a little bit larger than that, but generally, 1/3 to 6/10 of an acre. Many of them are around 1/3 to 1/2 an acre. There are some wetlands on some of the lots. We are, down a hill for those. For many people who are down there over the years, but we're kind of declined from Woodland, and it's a dead end street, cul-de-sac. You could go through the cul-de-sac, you could go through the Kings Grant property, mainly to Main Street. I'm not familiar with all the history because I think it predates me significantly, but when the municipal waste system was put in, for one reason or another, we exist kind of on an island surrounded by it. And my sense is that a lot of the homes that were built on Kelly Green originally were developed in the late 70s. And so, I've been there now for, I think it's 7 or 8 years. And as I've become more familiar with the surroundings and what's going on, and have had conversations, I wanted to bring up this possibility of, looking into figuring out if there's a way to connect to the municipal sewer system. And I think there are a number of reasons for it, but my concern is that we have a number of homes built on properties that typically have limitations in terms of what they can accommodate from a septic system perspective. And we have septic systems that are between 40 and 50 years old. So I think everybody does a really good job of taking care of their properties there, but there are just going to be limitations at some point. And I think at the moment we have a unique opportunity to potentially address this if there is good reason to address it and if there's support for it. We are going to have to be repaving the road, and that's, I think, a cost that's going to be incurred by Eversource or as a result of the gas expansion project. And I believe many people have connected now, and that road paving work is going to be forthcoming at some point. I think a number of people, because their systems are starting to age out, may have a cost at some point. So I think the appetite for considering connecting to the line, if it's made available, is probably at its highest. And then I also became aware of the fact that the town's been granted Arpa funds, and when I looked at the target projects for something like this seems to be highly relevant to it. And so, under the premise that at some point this is something that and possibly in the not too distant future may need to be taken on, it seemed like a prescient time to be raising this issue and having the discussion proactively. I just I'm probably missing several points. I think with regard to the project itself, it's just worth noting that also whether ARPA or not. And I know the town has a lot on its plate and a lot of considerations dealing with today's environment. But I also think that in addition to the public health concerns and or benefits here, it should be a positive project and one that creates longer term economic value for the town as well. I mean that there are going to be the revenues that will be generated from plugging into the system, which I know are not huge dollars, but I estimated $78,000 a year if the homes that are not on it had access to it and plugged in. And then quite frankly, I think there's a risk, at least with some of the properties, and or a benefit if they do have sewer access in terms of the property value and the appraisals, and that's something that can be more significant. I just went through and looked at what the current appraisals are, and there are a few homes that, have been built, probably more in line with what lots in town and how they get developed in terms of bedroom count and whatnot, not just recently, but over the years. And there are a number of homes that, have not and cannot be because of limitations. And the spread is about $10,000 per property in tax revenue to the town. And I think that, if that were to happen over time, it could potentially be another $90, $110,000 or $100,000 value to the town. So I think it checks a lot of boxes, and it's something worth looking into. And I also just want to emphasize, I think this isn't just simply about putting people in a position where they can optimize the value of their property. I actually think there's, there are significant limitations just given the size of the properties, given the wetlands, given how the topography of the area, and potentially limited work rates on some of these properties. And if it's not addressed, it's something that could put a lot of people in a cornered situation down the road, and it could become a public issue. So,
Thank you. So I'll give you some sort of response. Thank you for writing Tiger. He's the right guy. He's the one who's going to have to put this into his budget or explain why not. I'll tell you from a historical perspective, for the 10 years I've been on the town council, we've asked him to describe to us what is his road paving schedule. And over time, he's sort of developed a matrix for which roads he's doing and why he's investing in them. And so, that's been helpful. In the last, I'd say 5 years, we've expanded those questions to include sidewalks. And we've said, what is your plan for the next 5 years for expanding the sidewalk network and why? We have never asked him to expand. And if so, why? If not, why not? The sewer system. Thank you for making the town council aware of that there are people out there, groups of people, 14 homes. You may not be the only neighborhood that wants to be. So it's an important issue. We should be aware of it. You've made us aware of it. Thank you. The decision will rest with Tiger, whether he adds it to his budget. And if he doesn't add it to his budget, then he should explain to you why. And if you don't get satisfaction with him, then you should continue to elevate it to the town council and make noise and, make sure that if you don't get the satisfaction you want, you have every right to take it to the town council, and then we'll ask him, for a more public response on why he's doing what he's doing and why he's not doing what he's doing. So does that sound okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to, like I said, I want to put it on everyone's radar screen.
It may not make it into the Arpa discussion, which is of the immediate and as very specific parameters that we're going to hear about fairly soon, but it may end up having to show up in the 5-year capital plan. I already know that the first selectman is going to tell us about a new study with regard to our sewer system. $200,000, right? You guys just approved $200,000 to study the capacity of our sewer system. And so I know that the sewer system is on everybody's mind this week.
Yeah, and look, through my conversations that, talked to Tiger a few years ago, I had the gas line expansion and to Jen Allison as well. And I know that there are other areas within town that may have raised the issue in the past. And Jen actually made me aware of this a few years ago that, one of the other concerns on our street is a number of the reserve sites on our street are non-code compliant reserve sites as a result of what's happened over several decades. That's also be taken into consideration.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. If anyone else from the public online? Thank you. No? Tucker? No? Okay, then we'll move on. Labor agreement.
Excuse me, may I say something?
Sure.
To that subject, I'm not commenting on it directly, but just so everybody knows, Jim Cole fought long and hard to have that street with septic support, and it would
Sewer
be-
support.
sewer support, sorry. And he even asked the condominium behind them at the end of the road to connect to Main Street, and they refused. So I think it's a long time coming, and I think the town has to answer in some way. So I look forward to Tiger's comments.
John, can I,
Go ahead.
can regarding the study that's going to be done, my road, I've been waiting 15 years for drainage to come in. And now we're spending $200,000 to study what we already know is the issue. There's not enough drainage in certain areas. So, I'd love to know why we're not fast forwarding, spending more money, getting the infrastructure up to where it is. Because I hear numerous complaints of people flooding. I'm not surprised people are pumping water through their, I guess, sump pumps into the sewer lines because there's no alternative.
Yeah, the capacity issue.
So I think it's great.
Part of the bigger problem.
It's a bigger problem, but we're spending $200,000. We already know what the problem is. Let's start solving problems like that, or getting the infrastructure up and running a
Agreed.
little bit better.
Can I just make a comment in defense of Tiger?
It was at a line. I know it's not the agenda item, but I thought.
No, but the Kelly Grant is a unique situation. I think it's primarily the problem with King's Grant not being able to find access down to the main line. And that's something that has to be solved. The sewer system has plenty of capacity. It's just the flooding issue is one of overtaxing the system during flooding times,
Right.
when we have to remain in compliance with our regulatory requirements to maintain a sewer plant that's functioning properly. So the $200,000 study is to study where the water is coming into the system, like sump pumps,
Right.
because we have to stop that. That's
Right.
causing us to be out of compliance.
I agree that during flooding, you're seeing an increase in sump pumps. The sump pumps are running constantly, probably, and pumping into the sewer lines. The solution is to bring drainage lines onto the roads that need it. Like I said, as an example, 15 years, I still haven't seen a drain, and I know there's also many others that have this issue. So I do think the town needs to address the drainage issue, and it's going to cost money. Can't not spend the money on this type of stuff.
Right. The topography around New Canaan, as other communities like Greenwich and Darien, create, we have homes where they probably shouldn't have been built. And it's very difficult to solve some of these problems. Darien is focusing a lot of their Arpa money on their flooding problems, but actually they're focusing on the streets that flood and the access roads. So
I just think there's an opportunity, what Mark's talking about and what Mr. Delaquila is talking about in terms of the ARPA funds. I mean, this is a great opportunity, talking about real infrastructure problems, issues for homeowners in town. Looks like it's small potatoes in the long term for trying to upkeep that. So, and I get what you're saying, John, capital project may be the better way to do this in the long term, but we have a real opportunity here to get dollars for projects that are probably on a lower scale in terms of cost now.
yeah, it's
Subject to-
sewer use and infrastructure is part of ARPA's mandate that the Congress said.
Right. And if we have, public, it looks like public health issues on both sides here. So to me, it just kind of makes sense to dovetail both and not try to push it into a regular budget process if we have cash coming in now for these projects, but subject to Tiger. And maybe it's something we put on our agenda for next time around, next month. Like, let's move it, why are we spending another two? I get we're just going to spend the money, but we know what the problem is. So
Mike, I agree 100%. I'd love to know how much money it would cost to sewer and or drain some of the roads that really need it. I don't know the number, but ARPA is a great place, as is the budget itself. We can't defer these things.
Right.
But maybe we can fix what we already know is a problem and study the other ones
Correct.
later on.
Correct.
It seems to me that, so I'll argue the other side. I don't know that it's an ARPA thing. I think we have a responsibility to provide adequate sewer and drainage and sanitation to all of the homes, in town. And those in the 4 acre zone, we've determined that they have enough parking to deal with their waste. But in the 1/3 acre zone that he's described, we probably have a standard. And if we're not meeting it, then we probably need to. And that's probably the ordinary course of government. So I would argue that that's part of something we should do, not just here, but we should probably study where else like this and put it on our 5-year plan, just like we maintain our roads over a 20-year timetable. We ought to put a timetable out there by which we're going to sort of meet the standard on where we're not meeting it in the 1/4 acre zone and 1/3 acre zone, if there's an opportunity, and at least identify the obstacles. In this case, it may not be a financial obstacle at all. It may be, the King's Grant is is downhill of Kelly Green. And it may therefore not be a money question. It's a physics question. They don't want to pump it uphill a 1/4 mile. They'd much rather go downhill to Main Street, and they just need to make the deal. So you've basically shining a light on this. Jim Cole shown a light on this before. And so now maybe we just have to go make the deal with King's Grant, because it's in the public interest that we have adequate health and sanitation throughout the downtown.
You've got problems, you've got the Park Place ditch, which is constantly,
Yes.
every 3 years, people down there are taking, major hit, right? Losing property and equipment. And we know where the ditch goes. We know where the ditch has to be, go through the culvert under 106. And we just have to do the work. So far, town's been unable to do the work.
Well, I think we have a most capable head of public works, and that he will come back to us with a plan. So,
And not only that, the town, if they're negotiating, has the right of eminent domain. So if they need access, they can do it.
okay. Shall we move on to labor agreement? No further comments? Okay. To approve a labor agreement with the firefighters union, local 3224, the International Association of Firefighters, for the 4 years ending June 30th, 2025. It says here Cheryl Jones and Chris Hodgson. Are you going to present it to us?
Yes, I can give a quick overview of the tentative agreement. First, I would like to introduce Albie Bassett, who is our new Assistant Chief. Commissioner Forner, Attorney Hodson, and Mimi Pitt were all part of the negotiating team. To give a quick overview, in regards to the medical plan, right now the firemen have opted to not have the PPO, so the only plan that they are eligible for is the HSA. We were able to get the plan into a 3-tier. So a fireman who is single, a single plus one, and a family will pay on those tiers. Currently, they've all been paying on employee plus one. The wages, we got a 4-year contract. It's 2.35, 2.5, 2.5, and 2.5. The average over the 4 years is 2.46. We were able to give the firemen some education incentives. We do feel that the more we can get them educated in training, it will help them. And the big part is what we call a drop plan, which is a deferred retirement option plan. And I can have Albie give a quick overview of it, but this is a plan that is going to help the town to plan for retirements. Once we know someone retires, we will have some time to bring on a new firefighter. We only have academy seats twice a year. So right now we do pay a great deal of overtime when we bring a firefighter in. So this drop plan will help us with that. And I did just get a text from the head of the fire union. The good thing is 21 of the firemen voted yes and 3 did not vote. So the firemen are in favor of this. Albie, can you give a little bit of a quick presentation on the drop plan?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. The drop plan is the deferred retirement option. The members go into it with the selection of up to 4 years, depending on their years of service and their age. There's just a couple carve outs in the contract, depending if they could do 3 or 4 years. It allows them to lock in, it locks in their pension rate for the years of service and the current pay year for the year they select to go into it. So for this town, that assists us in, it holds that pension. So they're not getting the raises in their pension. So in this case, it's an average of 2.46, so about 8, almost 10% over the 4 years, probably a little more than that. They wouldn't get those raises in their pension, so that wouldn't come out of the pension fund. So they're locked in at the 2021 rate. This allows for the town to plan for retirements. So we have a few extra years to know that we're going to have to start onboarding somebody. Right now, we might have 3 to 6 months to know somebody's retiring, and depending on the schedule of the academy classes, and if we have a current list in place, that benefits us there. We might be incurring overtime if someone chooses to leave currently and not in the drop, so we wouldn't know that they make that decision. And for them, it's a good financial tool for the firefighters themselves. They might choose, for health reasons, for age, they get into it early. They're able to save a little more money and maybe, leave a little earlier, and, while they're healthy, and they can still and do the job and move on. So that's a good thing for them for financial planning. I'll field any other questions if you have it on the program.
Are there any questions from the town council?
I don't see any.
I think we pretty much covered those under executive session, but it was for the public. There was, no secrets to the questions that we asked were purely procedural.
It's a fire is on the table. Would Sven like to make the motion so we can debate it?
Sven will make the motion that the council approve the labor agreement with firefighter union local 3224 IAFF for 4 years ending June 30, 2025.
Is there first a second? Is there a second? Okay, we have a second. Rich, now, do we have any discussion?
I had the opportunity to meet with Cheryl and his team, and I think the contract's really a solid, tight contract. Our labor negotiators are really first-rate attorneys and negotiators. I've had the opportunity to chat with them as well, and I know a good negotiator when I see one. They're tough, and I'm really happy we have them. So great contract. I think there's a lot of savings that were achieved here. I think it's a fair contract. You always want a fair contract. You're not out there to stick it to the working man at all, and we don't do that in this town. So I'm 100% behind this contract.
And just to add what Sven said during executive, we did ask the question about, Cheryl already answered it. The vote was pretty unanimous with 20, we'll take over 20 votes. That was great. And, when you talk about a 4-year deal like this, it is nice to see us take care of our firefighters, because these guys work hard. And I also asked earlier, Chris, maybe you can chime in how this compares with local towns in our area. We asked that as well, but maybe you can, for the public, just give a quick synopsis of that.
I think it's fair. There's really no secrets in the state about what the towns are settling for. So we may be above some towns and below others. But I think overall, when you look at the medical and the wages together, that it's a fair contract for the town and for the union.
Great, thank you.
Any other further questions? Is the size of the fire department at this point supposed to be projected to remain constant over the 4 years? The size of the department?
Yes, there's no plans on increasing the staffing over the next 4 years.
So we've tackled the benefits. We now know what the salary increases are. We've heard from the police commission. They like it. Fire. I don't know what the police commission thinks of this contract. Maybe we should ask.
No, the fire commission.
Jack, do you want to make a few comments, Jack?
No, thank you. I think it was handled very well by the attorney, by Cheryl, and by the assistant chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. How long you been on the fire commission?
Since November of 2005.
Well, he has 20 more years to go.
So long as you'll keep me, I love doing it. Happy to serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack, for your service.
Right.
Okay, if there's any, so we've heard from the fire commission, we've heard from 21 of the 25 firefighters. We've heard from the chief and we've heard from the negotiator. So I think we're good. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you all.
Hey, before we let you go, we also asked about the ordinance, and we just want to, again, for the public, we had passed an ordinance for the volunteers, and we're happy to hear Cheryl told us that some of them are taking advantage of some of the opportunities that we opened up. So Cheryl, can you take a second and just tell us how that's going over?
Yes, it's gone over very well. They're very happy. We have volunteer firemen and also volunteer EMS who have taken part in the tax program. And I believe right now, Lunda had stated it was around 63,000. So it's going over very well and they are very happy with it.
It's great. Thank you very much.
All right, nothing further. We'll move on to the first selectmen's update, item number 5. Go ahead, Kevin.
Good evening. As always, COVID is number one, and you hear my weekly call out on Thursdays, and we're still in the, I would call modest range of weekly cases. It was very interesting. Last week, there was no one under the age of 25. And the one person that was hospitalized briefly is out of the hospital. So it remains a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And although there are a few breakthrough cases, and the breakthrough cases are very mild. We are having a very successful start with our Irwin House twice a week testing and our once a week booster shots. The FDA just approved both Moderna and J&J for booster shots. We have Pfizer and Moderna. We won't have J&J, but they also approved the mixing and matching, so you can get whatever second shot, booster shot you want. Since most of our seniors in New Canaan that we did at our clinic got Moderna, we should be picking up the pace with booster shots considerably in the next few weeks at Irwin House.
So my daughter, my 24-year-old daughter needed to get tested. And I said, well, town does that. And she said, really? Because they want to charge me $250 down at the clinic. And I said, why don't you call the health department? So I'm putting this out there to anybody who might be watching this, that you call the health department and they say, yes, we're doing testing. Come on down to Irwin, or I think she went to the Vine Cottage one day and Irwin a different day. But she said it was a great experience. And then my mother called and she said, I think I need a booster. And I said, call Jen Eielson and ask her if you need a booster. So kudos to our health department for fielding these calls and helping our citizens and pointing them in the right direction. But I don't think it's well understood that we do this. We might do a better job, maybe marketing that we're doing this.
So, yeah, our weekly call-outs and emails go to virtually everybody in town. So I think
if you put it on Instagram, maybe my daughter would see it.
As of this morning, they are not doing Moderna boosters because they haven't completely gotten all the approvals to do so.
Yeah, we expect to start next Thursday.
Okay, so you were saying that they were doing, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Not yet.
For tomorrow, it's just Pfizer, because that's the only one until today approved. Capital project, I'll give you a quick overview of where we are. The high school roof is just about completed. And we were out with a solar RFP for the high school with a plan that will add a lot of solar to the high school, but also a section that will cover the field lights at Dunning Field, which is on a separate meter. So
right.
That's a big electric bill we have with Dunning Field, and we look to offset that with solar. The Saks solar is done, and I think it's just about ready to be electrified or whatever they call the word. It was waiting electrical parts. Everybody's having problems with supply chains, and so the Saks CHP is about to commence. They've completed the boiler installations, and we're working on the planning and contracting for the town hall and Lapham Center CHP. As I said before, the CHP at Lapham will also cover the field lights at the water tower fields. So, and then what? The Playhouse roof, as you can see, is underway. And we met today with Eversource and walked around town for the expansion that they plan to do early next spring on Upper Elm, Upper Pine Street, and Grove Street. And obviously, so Main Street is going to be paved, I think, next week. Lower Main Street, which is, again, Aquarian water, not necessarily Eversource gas, but it's being, and then.
Does that mean we can't drive on it? They're paving it. I mean, does that mean, is it going to affect traffic next week? Main Street,
Whenever,
they're closing it?
I suppose they are going to close it, yeah, to pave it.
Like they'll close half of it?
No, I think they close.
The whole thing?
Yeah, it's a mill and pave of the whole thing.
Okay.
So.
We will, though,
I don't know
observe that
exactly.
some people have to get out of their driveways, so it won't be totally inaccessible.
That's right. And then obviously,
Still waiting for that. Waiting for that.
as you can see, Aquarian water is still disturbing Main Street and Elm Street, but they should be finished by Thanksgiving, I guess. And I get a lot of questions about the roads, which downtown, unfortunately, is both Aquarian and Eversource gas, but we're making progress. The Playhouse, we've had many meetings, several meetings, and we're beginning to formulate an operating plan for a commercial movie theater with an operating plan, and also be in a position to ask for the additional funds we're going to need to upgrade the building for ADA and other purposes to be able to go back into business next year.
When you say operating plan, that's specific to a vendor, meaning we're working on a plan with a vendor, or we're working on a plan that we can take to multiple vendors. I mean, what does that exactly
Well,
mean? Operating
we
plan.
looked at the alternatives, having a first run commercial theater, a independent film, garden cinema kind of alternative, or something that would be a mixture of movies. And I think now we are pretty well convinced that the best economic plan is first run movies, because our catchment area is so large now. Wilton, Darien, Westport don't have theaters. And, so we have probably, about 100,000 people that in our neighborhood that would come to New Canaan for movies, and
Not all at the same time.
and to come to our restaurants. So we do think it's an economic engine, and one that the public wants. Todd LaViere has suggested we do some surveying as we go into the process to understand whether the public really feels that way, but I think that's the most economic model. And as you know, as we talked about, the police department building process is underway. We're going to have a second all boards meeting in mid-November to get the report on the renovation in place option. We are having meetings with 2 other towns next week to follow up on possibly joining a pistol training range that 3 towns will share out of town. And then we also are going to bring back 4 other locations to more detailed study as to.
We've talked about Wilton, combining with Wilton on a pistol training range. Who's the third town? Ridgefield.
So both who are in the phase of building new police departments. As I've said before, the Soundview Lane cell tower is up. AT&T will go live sometime in November. Verizon will be added after that. And the Upper Ponus Ridge Tower should come to the town. They keep on telling me in a week or 2. For the community consultation phase, which we have to do. We could opt out of it, but we're going to do it. And then hopefully get it to the siting council by January, February. All the planning for that is positive so far, and the neighbors are basically on board.
But it'll be a year before you actually get the benefit of that tower, right?
Yeah, but
it'll be another year.
It's great
Okay.
progress. We'll have other positive news very soon about other towers and other locations. We have a Waveney House use study underway, which we hope to have completed by December as we go into budget season. We have a bond offering in November for $20 million for the library grant, among other things. And Diane Wilson shifted over to be our controller, and she's underway with the audit with Linda, and very pleased with having her on board in that capacity. We're outsourcing a big chunk of the pension support that Diane was doing with our pension consultant. They have a whiz bang online thing that can do things that we were doing by hand and can be also used by the employees themselves if they want to. And then I think that's all I have.
The all boards meeting in November, that presumably that's to talk about alternative sites for police station.
And the building committee will meet on the 11th of November, and they will present the option of renovating as new. The building new on that site is the most expensive option, so they'll mention it, but I don't think that's anybody's first choice.
So the building committee meets on the 11th of November, and after that, we will meet as an all boards meeting and discuss.
And here it's
hear their recommendation.
And then I think in January, in December, the Board of Finance will begin more financial work on the alternatives, and by the January meeting, hopefully we'll make a decision.
Is there study going on the alternate locations?
We have the architect doing the more detailed work for 4 additional locations.
And Kevin, is there any way to share that information with the building committee prior to our meeting so that
it's not going to be ready for their,
okay.
It might be.
Because that's one of the things that it felt like the building committee wanted to be in that conversation.
Well, it's not really, the building committee was not tasked with that. So for them to relate to it now, I mean, it's really the Board of Finance and the Town Council and the Board of Selectmen, they're going to make that decision. It's not there's no expertise on that committee that really on the location issue. Once they have a project, they're going to be responsible for building the new building or renovating the current building. So, any questions?
Maria.
What is the focus of the Waveney use study?
Well, in order for us to do the next phase of ADA compliance, you probably have all seen the work that's been done on the first floor, which is the first floor of the building ADA compliant. We still have to address our long-term use of the second floor, and that requires both an elevator and some bathrooms that are accessible to everyone.
So you're only studying the main building, not?
Just, and having a plan that will maximize revenue so that mainly around weddings, so that we can justify the additional expense to at least bring it up to ADA compliance. The question of air conditioning can be put off for a few years.
I'm curious about space, rental space. My husband doesn't work in an office anymore. And when they need to meet, they're booking out something in Westport. And it's, I maybe $500-600 for the day. So I don't know if that's something we can think about. There's a lot of people that are no longer working in an office and need a place to meet.
That's what the library is going to offer. Library's going to have a lot of conference room space.
For a fee, they'll charge a fee. Will they charge a fee?
I don't know. I don't think they will.
I'm thinking of a way to offset the cost.
I think it depends on if you're a for-profit or a nonprofit.
Yeah. But there's tutors.
Yeah,
I think there'll be a lot of space in the library for that type of thing. People.
I think they've talked about revenue from that, but I'm not sure they have an actual plan yet before it gets in place. So
Penny was
But that
next.
should be factored into what they're thinking about at Waveney also, just like community organization use. Organizations meet all over the place, and what are their needs? And it could be a focal point of community interaction among all the different organizations if you got people meeting at the same time. And I don't know whether or not all the rooms in the library are actually designed to do that kind of thing, where if organizations have need for storage of files. I know a number of organizations I belong to. What do we do with files? They're in my basement, and they really actually belong someplace where everybody in the organization can get to them. So I think it's part of, I was part of an interview this week, and the interviewer was really quite broad in exploring different possibilities of how to use the second floor.
And
And
I
whether or not
understand
the
this-
offices stay there, they don't stay there. I mean, they were really looking at all kinds of possibilities.
I know for post-prom, I hear they store everything on the third floor. Is there any way to make
Yeah.
use
No.
of that?
No.
So that's why we're studying how Waveney gets used and whether we could use it better. Excellent. Mark?
Not to harp on the AECom consulting for the sewer, but what is the what's the goal? What are they going to tell us?
They're going to put
Tiger's here.
measuring devices. Tiger on?
Tiger just arrived.
Tiger, you want to answer the,
And what the scope of the work?
you missed the earlier discussion, Tiger, about the,
No, I was on.
Oh.
I was on, sorry. Yeah, I was coming from hockey practice. I apologize. So first off, the AECom study is actually a state mandate required for our permit for the wastewater plant itself. We've been waiting to perform the study until we received our upgrade on our permit, and it's still in there that we have to perform the study. It's called an infiltration and inflow study. So basically what it does is it studies the 25 miles of sewer that we have in town and determines where we're having problems for not just infiltration, which is water seeping into our existing infrastructure. Some of our infrastructure is circa 1900, 1908, specifically in the downtown. And then we have inflow, which is basically that some pumps from people, whether they have drainage in the road or they don't have drainage in the road. The majority of people actually have drainage in the road, but they have a sump pump running and they'll kick their sump pump into their washer outlet or into another way, into a slop sink in their basement, and that will run to our wastewater plant. Majority of sump pump problems, or some of the sump pump problems we have, are because people are building deeper basements and actually going and getting into the groundwater system, and then they're needing a sump pump from there. So what this will do, we'll put various meters throughout town for a 12-week period, both in the wet and in the dry. In the dry will give us a baseline as to exactly what's happening in certain areas, and then in the wet, it'll tell us what's happening, obviously, when it rains. We can see it at the plant. We have a rain gauge, and we actually have a flow gauge at the plant showing how much is coming in. And as Jim Rogers mentioned, we get about 600,000 gallons a day during the dry, about 1 million gallons in the wet. And then when it rains, you'll see that spike, and you can actually see the needle move as it spins around, and it'll pop out somewhere around the 7 million gallons range. And at 7 million gallons, we're right at the limit of the plant. And the past storm brought that even more into light for us. And the fact that, every development that goes in, people are putting in deeper basements. Some pumps are prevalent, and we need to try to have a little bit of a better handle on it. Our surrounding towns, some of them charge upwards of $5,000 for a sewer hookup so that they can utilize that money to then grab some low-hanging fruit and try to actually take care of some of their info problems elsewhere. So they'll charge the homeowner $5,000 for a sewer hookup and then utilize that money to either extend their drainage or help in situ form another pipe to stop some infiltration, things of that nature. We do not charge that rate at present. We are looking at upgrading or increasing our fee, but we don't come anywhere near what our competitive town or our comparable towns do. So in essence, it'll satisfy our permit requirement, and then it'll actually allow us to focus on areas where we have a problem. And it might be that we need to put drainage in there. We've done a very, very good job over the past 20 years while we've been upgrading our paving to put in drainage anywhere and everywhere it's needed. Give you an example. In 2007, when we had probably our largest storm prior to Ida, my office received over 440 phone calls for people that were flooding. And through Ida, that's probably less than 30. So we had put together at that time a list that took us over a year to answer every single person's call and try to see what we could do for them. we put together a list that was probably over 120 locations long. And we worked through that list. And while there are some left, as Sven mentioned, the ones that are left, or some of them are just very, very difficult. Park Place, there's a culvert that runs underneath a state road. We do not have control over that culvert. State says it's fine, it's fine. There's an easement that runs behind the properties. The easement actually states that we can't upsize the pipe without everyone's approval along that easement line. It basically is written in there that we can't do any work inside that easement and inside that drainage ditch without their approval. So we would have to get every single person's approval to do any work there. We have other areas in town. Davenport Ridge has got some problems. Willowbrook has some issues. There's some various issues. Old Stanford Road, the state's finally coming to the table and helping us. We reached out to our drainage consultant. We have him coming in to do another look. We have a proposal on my desk for a $50,000 study for the area around Old Stanford Road to try to help those people out. So we are attacking each area that we can. And this study is one thing that we've had to do for probably about 5 years. We've been seeing the numbers creep up, and now we're at the point where we need to do it. It's been in our budget for over a year, and it's the right time to go forward and do this study that it is technically a state mandate for our permit, and see exactly what the condition of our system is and go from there. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Anyone else on this or any? We're still with Kevin, not just Tiger. Any
Sorry,
other for Selectmen's report?
I do. Any updates on the Board of Ed building?
Well, there's nothing to talk about publicly until we have a final
Okay.
deal. We're very close.
Okay.
Probably tomorrow.
But you're asking because you know that why do you ask?
I just wanted to ask if there was anything public to announce.
Okay, so we're working on trying to find a permanent home for the Board of
Yes.
the Board of Education,
Yeah, so
and
I
you're
expect
having private negotiations with
Yeah, I expect the announcement imminently. So,
imminently. Okay, great.
and finally, I have one other item. If you any further questions,
Go ahead. We'll think of something.
I just wanted to thank Rich and Sven and Liz and John for your service to the town, and it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kevin.
Okay, I'll stay here for the ARPA discussion if you want.
You don't know how good you've had it until we leave and you get a whole new crew here, you know, and so.
Let's do it.
Thank you. It's been great working with you. I think that I'll say from my point of view, and maybe you two want to add something, but I have to say that this board has worked very well, not only together, but with you and the Board of Selectmen. I think that was not, you were on the town council when we didn't enjoy such a great relationship with the other boards. And, we've worked hard to stay in our lane and, signal when we're going to make decisions, make those timely decisions, and tried hard to communicate, effectively with both you, the Board of Selectmen generally, and Todd, and with the Board of Education. So, I think we're in a good place, and I think you're going to be probably in a good place for the next 4 years with the new town council. Anything to add?
I just add that I think the town council has done a very nice job of working together and supporting the town across the spectrum of everything that comes our way. And I think, John, you've done a very nice job of leadership on the town council, making sure that we're talking about stuff that needs to get talked about, which sometimes other people don't want us to talk about. But we've had a lot of more public discussion, I think, than in the past, and I think that's been productive. And I've enjoyed working with everybody on the town council. And I think it's been a good 4 years. I think it's been a very good 4 years for the town council.
We still have a whole rest of the meeting too,
Well, since he brought it up.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, it's always been an honor to serve and to represent the people the best that I can.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Good report.
Thank you. I'll stay for the ARPA discussion.
Okay, American Rescue Plan Act update. I'm going to turn that over to Mark as a spokesman for our committee. We've had a committee led by 4 of us who's been focused on coming up with parameters on that. So why don't you give us an update on the committee's work?
Great. Well, first off, in the spirit of working together, the 4 of us have, I think, done a good job of trying to move forward as quickly as we can in a collaborative manner. We've gotten input from the Board of Finance. We've listened to numerous public comments, received emails. Penny went and sat in on presentations. I've talked to Chris Shipper, et cetera. So there's been a lot of work going into this, and we had a meeting last week, and we tried to put some thoughts down onto paper, and now it's on your tablets. And I'll just say that the last slide, which has the sort
We're
of
looking at the PowerPoint.
correct,
Okay.
but the last
Can you
slide.
pull it up, Tucker, on the screen so that?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go on to my email and everything.
Okay, well, in the meantime, I'll just say that the last slide comes from a Excel spreadsheet, which I also attached because it's easier to look at because the font got too small. So if you look at the last slide when we get there, that'll you can refer to the other attachment in your on your tablets. But anyway, the goal was to think about parameters, think about the best uses, think about how we could move on some items quicker than others, and we built that framework. And if you look at the parameters on your tablet, I think you'll see these are a lot of the items that we've discussed in prior meetings, in joint meetings of the committee, and we put them down. So I don't. Should I read them? Otherwise, I think if you're all looking at them, you can see that we want to hit areas that are impacted by COVID. We feel that support is non-recurring and should avoid operational needs. I think we all agreed on that in our prior meeting. In terms of infrastructure, we want to target the long-term capital plan, and we want to pull projects forward. We have this money. We have defined projects. We've heard from Tiger about them. The hope is, can we pull them forward? And we can discuss that, but that was one of the parameters. I'll just skip to, we want to assist the economic vitality of the town, especially areas hit by COVID. I think Waveney Park is an example of that, or the downtown. In terms of philanthropic endeavors, I think we all agreed that we don't want to spearhead anything where we're the anchor sort of funding for that mechanism. And I think we also discussed that in some of our meetings. And then in terms of the nonprofit support, we want to make sure that it's COVID related, and it obviously benefits the organizations that are focused on our town. So those are the general parameters. And then moving, we go into a little bit more detail in the next slide. Try to put a little bit more some nuance to those parameters. And then, we've taken all of that and we've looked at all of the proposals and conversations we've had with everyone. And we're trying to get consensus among the town council and the members that were in that committee. And I think we did. We gave a list of things that appeal to us right now. And then we gave a list of things that we either don't think meet the parameters or are we need more information. I think the first selectman talking about the Playhouse, we want to see that operating study before we say, hey, listen, this is something ARPA money should go towards, as an example, and why you'll see it towards the bottom. But I don't want to hog up the mic. I know, Penny, Rich, and Christina were there, and we've gone through all of these, and amazingly, we all agreed, and this is what we came up with. And I think that is a great springboard for the whole town council. So I will leave it there and open it up for any discussion that we should be having on it.
You want to give a little local color on these line items?
Yeah. Sure. Does anyone,
Yeah.
we can tackle them together.
I was gonna say, you're kind of in the rhythm. so-
Okay, I'll let, so I'm going to switch to my, my
other-
bigger font version. Okay, so the infrastructure, we had the Waveney Conservancy, the matching support that had been mentioned. We thought that was important to the town. Waveney got a lot of use during COVID, and we think that money would serve a good purpose. The generator that Tiger has it's for emergency purposes, and I think we're all aware of the need for things like that. That is on there. The library, there's $1 million there for addressing the P&Z preservation expense. You may ask why. Well, that's going to be a big expense to the town. I think Steve can attest that the library is working hard at coming up with the best solution to meet the P&Z, and the group thought that we should at least acknowledge that and that be on the list. Sidewalks, increase the green lengths. That's important. You've walked through all the parks. You've heard Chris Shipper talk. This is by far one of our greatest assets, if not our greatest asset, our open spaces, and increasing the ability to get from place to place, I think, is important. The ADA compliance, self-explanatory. We've heard, now moving to healthcare and community, the YMCA talking about increasing their daycare capacity. We added that. The Waveney system, expanding the telehealth services. That was one of the items that was on, I think, the first selectmen's list, and we thought was appropriate. Public safety, I think, is a big one. Speed cameras, security cameras, whatever. We need more of it. And we felt that an allocation in that area is, and again, these numbers may not total 250, but we're at least putting a number on paper. And let's say it only costs $100,000. We have a number there. So I also want to mention that about some of these line items. And then moving to business and economic vitality, we were thinking about the downtown tree planting, beautification, etc. Money that Tiger probably could spend well, and we have that there. The Wi-Fi, I think the ability to expand broadband for the public in the downtown area is important. And then moving to government, I think one thing we all need to remember is that some people do believe that money should be put back into the general fund for lost revenues. I think we appreciate that and realize that you could do that with just an offset, but maybe if we allocate money towards money that we know is coming down the pike, and that would be areas like the police station, the library with the grants, and the upgrade of the police station. So that's essentially something that the taxpayer could be happy about, because that's infrastructure that has to be built. Parking fund, the first selectmen's talked about that. Same with the upgrade to the TV and all the systems in town hall. I guess the question was, is $50,000 enough? I think Rich thought, hey, there's a lot that could be done, and it's not cheap. We should at least put a number that may be more realistic, and if not, then we don't need it. The premium pay, we've heard from the Board of Finance as it relates to the teachers. I think we eventually are going to have to address for all town employees. We don't know that number, and it's clearly something that we'll discuss, not in this meeting, but it should be listed as a to be determined item. And then also thought about projects like Coheat and Power for other areas, if we could pull those forward. Again, we're trying to pull things forward here with the money. And then lastly, nonprofit. We have one very specific item here, and that's a new car for Forget About. And that's an easy one. I think you'll see below there's that $1 million that was for the community foundation. Again, we're not saying it's not something we would never approve. It's just that we need more information just to put a $1 million line item into the ARPA for the ARPA funds. So that's about as quick as I could do that summary. And
I'd just like to clarify something.
Yes.
For Kevin's benefit, that the broadband expansion we spoke about, we're concerned about cybersecurity, and we really recommend that it be separate from the town.
To be separate.
Separate, meaning that you don't get into the town system in order to access. broadband.
I'm not following.
Because of cybersecurity, you wanted to keep it separate from anything that's,
Oh, you mean the public Wi-Fi?
yes,
Ah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
We actually, discussed that several years ago with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's an easy thing to do. Other towns have done it. We have public Wi-Fi all over town. It actually helps the merchants by knowing who's coming into their stores. Google has a great product to follow you, so.
Surveillance state.
So, and then just to close, John, the items at the bottom are obviously for discussion as well. We put them there because we just didn't think they were ready. I think the goal here is to try to get that money back or out as quickly as we can. And I think the list above at least says, hey, the town council would, if we all agree, at least the committee agreed, if we all agree, these things could move forward if brought to us through proper appropriation through the process from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance and up to the town council. The items on the bottom, we need more information. Most people didn't feel comfortable with them at the top. Not to say that these are no-go, it's just, this is where we are right now. And again, we're looking at things as of today. Just earlier, Tucker forwarded another request from the Athletic Foundation, which has a lost revenue that they're trying to address. So something we'll have to look at. So it is fluid, but this is what we have so far.
I think with a number of these projects, also, we need a whole lot more information. Wherever they appear on this list. I mean, what is involved in some of these projects and how would the money be used? So I think that's probably one of our next steps, is to get to these various entities and have them, prepare some proposals for us with some more in-depth descriptors of the projects.
Some have, Penny, some have submitted paperwork already, like in CTV 79 submitted an estimate. So we do have that back to that forum in July, but not from all of them, but we do have some of that already.
Okay, well, we don't have access to that. And actually when, like I was in conversation with Bob Doran about Channel 79, and I said, you came in with what, $50,000? And he said, yeah, or 40 or whatever it was. And I said, does that really take us to the next couple years? I mean, people are going to be more and more dependent upon virtual attendance at meetings. And so do we really have the right equipment? I mean, should we all be wearing lavaliers so that the public can actually hear us? Do we have the appropriate cameras and so forth? So I encouraged him to really, really, really look at his proposal as to how you can not only just address today's needs, but, carry us way into the future.
Tucker, could you forward those papers? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the coverage, Penny, completely, because, if you go back in the archives of 79 and you watch some of our meetings in the past, and I've said this before, the camera footage that we did 5 years ago is actually better than it is now. So we can't go backwards. I mean, it's, what you're seeing on 79 now is the entire table of the town council. If you don't know us by our voices, you have no idea who's saying what, who's, and if you wanted to meet somebody on the street and say hello, you don't know what they look like.
Right.
So,
and there should be some camera, capability from here so that the addresser, is featured. So, I mean, it was a good conversation with Bob Doran, and he kind of gets it, or, we need to go forward more than what was the original proposal.
Dear committee members, 4% for early childcare is the wrong decision to be making for this project. I won't be here with you, but I really think that the town needs to prioritize early child care. And 4% of this is just makes me very unhappy.
Sven, we needed more information from the Nature Center, and we know that the schools are
I
working
think
on
that the
something.
town needs to go out and not just wait for stuff to happen. The town needs to be proactive and go out there and make it happen.
I'm just trying to understand what that means, because we've been given a proposal by the experts over at Waveney, and they said, this is how much we need to contribute, the town to contribute alongside our own efforts, and this is how much capacity. And I mean, they were very specific. Did I say, what did I say? I meant the why, but the why came with a very specific plan and how much we would invest alongside them, you know. And so you're saying that we did, and how much did they ask us for, the YMCA?
They asked us for 250.
And so it's in this plan for 250.
1.2 million, wasn't it?
Well, they haven't scoped out the full cost of their renovations, but they're up into the $900,000 range for the total project.
But they asked us for 250, and it's in here as a line.
That's
on
kind of
this
a maximum for the kinds of things we'd match.
Right. Okay, so that number is not, that was something we're pulling from the original documentation.
And just to clarify, the YMCA is not looking to expand this footprint. It's space within the existing
Right.
building.
So there's a limit to how much they're saying at this point. Okay.
And I think
John, can I ask this a different way though? And maybe I'm misinterpreting what Sven's saying. I think Sven's saying we should be doing more of a top down here. How much additional childcare do we need to support the town with the growth it's having of people moving in and the change in hours, et cetera? And how do we get that to happen? The YMCA said we can handle a little bit of it. Well, is that a little bit of, are they meeting it? Or is it 10% of what we need? And if it's 10% of what we need, what are we doing? Are we going to the nursery schools and saying, what you guys want to expand, we'll help you? Are we advertising for new nursery schools to come into town? To say, we got a shortage and are you going to help us? You know, can you help us?
Okay.
And
Well,
that's what it doesn't, that's what it doesn't address.
All right, I want to ask a question. Linda, are the rules of ARPA allowing us to set aside money for a future as yet unidentified project? Like daycare?
You have 3 years.
You have 3 years? Okay, so as long as we identify it in the next 3 years, otherwise what happens to it?
Just reallocate it to something else, right?
It gets reallocated.
It's reallocated.
Okay, so to Sven's point, we could pick an earmark, $1 million, set it aside for the purpose of, and if the proposals don't come in to spend it, we can reallocate it toward a different one of these projects. Thank you.
One thing that we ought to make clear is that there's a difference, I think, in our analysis, should be a difference between preschool and after school.
Or daycare.
What does daycare refer to?
Infant daycare.
Age-wise?
Yeah,
Spaces.
infant, right.
Yeah, so I can comment on, maybe we should have a strategic focus on daycare, preschool age kids. But the school age kids, there's a new project that's being discussed by the Board of Ed, Dr. Lutzy, that would actually bring in a commercial entity, a provider from the outside, and methodically, design what, first of all, analyze the needs, train up. The entity would fund their entire, self-fund their entire project, and then the cost burden would be on the parents. So it would be a use-based system. And so until we find out what direction that is headed in, it'd be very difficult for us to try to charge into that space and try to do it maybe with government money. But preschool is a different issue. I won't speak to that. If there's a gap, we should identify it and attack it, right?
I think the key is knowing, is there a gap? I mean, I think there is a gap from what I've seen, but I have nothing to go on except stories, right?
Well, I can tell you.
And so where do the facts come from that say this thing is challenging us to increase our infrastructure to meet some things, to meet infrastructure from a water standpoint, both sewer and septic, from a communication standpoint, Wi-Fi, The ability for businesses to operate here with very, very high speeds so that they're not at a handicap around the town. And kind of that's more strategic view is just not here. And I don't know where to go get it. I mean, I think that's kind of what the town needs to do. What is our strategy over the next 5 years? We got a 5-year capital plan. What are the goals it's attaining? Right? I mean, is it going to be
We're doing
world
that.
class in
That's what
communication?
we're doing right here, right now.
Could I make a few points?
Yes, are you next?
No, just
You're next. Go ahead.
So when we talk about a 5-year capital plan, the charter requires the departments to forecast what they may need in the next 5 years. So it's a needs plan, right? Roofs, boilers, vehicles, right? It's not there's no nice to haves in there, unless we consider the land acquisition fund, which is a nice to have or a need. But so every year when you go through the budget process, everybody says, is this a need or a nice to have? Rarely do we have nice to haves in the
And
budget.
even some of our needs, like fire trucks, get pushed back a year.
Yeah, exactly. So we shouldn't look at, and it's not a plan. It's just a request. It's things that we want to make sure we know around this, because we did this, what's it called? Facilities dude. We know when roofs may need to be replaced. We know when boilers may need to be replaced. So there's a whole bunch of things down the road that we want to know about. So we don't have an $18 million middle school expansion that was never on the plan. So that's one important thing. We don't have a 5-year capital plan. It's a list of.
We don't have a 5-year capital vision. We don't have a vision of how much sidewalk we'll have 5 years from now. We don't have a vision of, are we ever going to have a transportation system? We don't have a vision of what are we going to do with wastewater over the 5-year period?
Well,
We've got a gentleman in the back that says our houses have been not serviced for the last 15 years. And we've been asking for it. You got to,
Well, for a specific reason though, Rich. I mean,
no, I got it. But, and I'm not
when
trying
you have
to,
a Jim Cole out there trying to solve the problem and Jim Cole can't solve it, it's a tough problem. So.
But I think
usually to have a 5-year strategy, you need a 5-year vision.
So another point I'd make is in your parameters, you say it should not spearhead philanthropic endeavors requiring additional fundraising.
no,
Some of these nice to haves.
Right.
We want to be partners with an organization that's going to raise the funds. For example, the ice rink, for example, the powerhouse, right? But and that may require a 2 or 3 year fundraising period. We have 3 years to spend these funds. So I don't quite understand why you would exclude things that.
now they're excluded. They're not excluded. They're just.
They're
Right.
putting down the
We need more
list.
information.
You need more
Right.
information. I think also, the way I approach this, Kevin, was not everything in the top. You're never going to agree with everything, and you're never going to agree with everything. But what we're trying to do is find consensus. So that's what I feel like we did well. I may want the ice rink, but I was in the minority. So you know what? That's the way I think it works in the committee. And that's the way I hope it works with the town council. Not everything there you're going to agree with, but if we agree together on everything, then we're good.
Yeah. And then the final point I made is the point I made before. So the process has to be one of the special appropriation request. We'll start with the Board of Selectmen, go to the Board of Finance. We now know some of your parameters, right? I don't think it's possible to have a grand plan. I think we're going to, bring a series of special appropriation requests in the next 3 or 4 months around a
I
kind
think
of a
that's
global.
what Mark's trying to say that.
I'm saying here, Kevin, if you bring these top
And at
line
that time,
items
we'll have
to us,
support, just
green light them, get them done. If we can pull things forward, we're all in agreement. Let's get them done.
Yeah.
This money does not need to sit in the general fund. However, if you bring us in the next month something about, I'm just going to pick on the Playhouse because it's first, we're not going to approve it because we all agreed it doesn't, we need more information.
We're not going to be ready for it. Anyway.
No, I understand, but I'm using it as an example. Like
And the
we
final
want to
point-
green light these things.
Final point I make is we never proposed just giving $1 million to the community foundation. In fact, we had a further discussion with the community foundation where they are a resource. They know our nonprofits and we can use them. In fact, I think you ought to have the community foundation come and make a presentation to you in November,
That would
December,
be helpful.
to understand their process so that they can go out as part of their grant process and say, please identify specific COVID needs. And they may add up to $300,000. I think we shared with you the fund that they raised.
I mean, that's the point. That's why it's not at the top, because it's not going to be, but we want to try to give you the incentive.
Right.
Because we know the process, we're last, but we're telling you, hey, can we move any of these along at a quicker pace?
Right.
Because we found consensus among them. And I think that's where we are right now.
Where did the Get About one come from?
It was a Penny,
There was a
we reached
request,
out
wasn't
or they reached out to us.
They
Because
reached out.
They reached out to us.
They raise the money for their Get About vans, and they also get grants from the Community Foundation when they need one. So I wouldn't disturb that process. Plus, we're saving them $60,000 a year in their operating expenses by the public-private partnership we're doing.
But this was addressing a specific need because they need a second bus.
Well,
But usually they go to the community foundation and they ask and they get ranked and they get evaluated versus other needs in the community.
Right,
And-
but I think the point is this is a great example of something that was very specific.
Yeah.
That impacts the community and that we all love. It's a great organization.
Right.
And that's why we put it in there. Whereas the $1 million going to the community foundation, we didn't have enough information. So we didn't feel like we could just say, hey, this needs to move and we're gonna move on it.
But what I hear Kevin saying is that the Get About van, 50 grand, and the 100 grand for an ice skating rink, we're not going to ever be the ones who dig into each of the proposals and
Right.
figure out whether they're ready.
Right.
That by saying, if we added them up and they come up with $2 million worth of potential needs, and we say, okay, here's $1 million, community foundation, you sort out, how best to spend the million for Get About vans, ice rinks, and other things, that what goes into that pile, and make it their job to allocate things
Right.
when and if
And that
the
could
information
include
has come in.
like the Athletic Foundation, because they're a nonprofit. I mean, they traditionally haven't been they have gotten grants from the community foundation. But that's, rather than having individual nonprofits, other than Waveney is a large ask, as is the YMCA.
Right.
But having all the nonprofits to go through the community foundation process
And
have-
compete for dollars.
Right, but I
Compete-
think,
compete-
right, but
Yeah.
so long as
Yeah.
we're just not putting a number out there,
Right.
We'll substantiate the number.
we need-
Absolutely.
right, I think that was the issue. We weren't
Not picking
substantiating.
winners and losers. It's having them identify real COVID impacts.
Right, and
If
that,
they can't identify it, they wouldn't be funded.
I think you guys are agreeing.
Right.
yeah, no, we're
I think
agreeing.
you're really agreeing.
But one of the things
We
that
just
we
wanna see
discussed was that we really wanted
what
monies,
they think is a
if
good
it
idea.
was to go through the community foundation, to be to nonprofits that were based in New Canaan. And we know that there are a lot of nonprofits that come to the community foundation that exist kind of with one foot here, but they're mostly out of town.
Well, there's several nonprofits that service New Canaan residents because their catchment area they may be facing Greenwich, like Kids in Crisis is a fabulous resource
Mhm.
that, serves New Canaan and Darien and other communities. They're based in Greenwich. The fact is that when they want to remove a kid from a family, they bring them to be housed in Greenwich and drive them to school every day. So that's a perfect example of an out of town nonprofit that services New Canaan residents. Same on mental health. There's resources in Norwalk. So, and you learn about all these with the community foundation because they give grants to them only because they're supporting New Canaan.
But for that reason, I
Yeah.
think it would be important to meet with the community foundation to
exactly.
understand their parameters
Right.
and to see how we're best suited.
I think we're all agreeing.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the point.
I think this is a great, this is a great start, because now, it began with the selectmen providing their list. We got to see it, and now we've reflected and we've provided them something that they can now study to see the mind of at least, our representatives. And it's gonna, what do they call this up in Washington? Reconciliation between
Reconciliation.
the selectmen vision and the town council vision, and we'll reconcile this into, what's ready.
I don't quite understand the $500,000 for the library offset. We're going to bond $10 million next month. And that's going to be amortized over 20 years at very low interest rates.
Yeah, I am curious about that too. It's one of the surprises on the list that didn't come out of the Board of Selectmen and didn't come out of our public hearing. So what's the thinking
Well,
behind that?
we had agreed that, or some of us believe that, some people wanted money to offset revenues and or be put back into the general fund. I think our view was, no, we've been pretty fortunate as a town. But however, if we can identify capital projects that
Would be coming out of the general fund.
well, which eventually
Yeah.
is a town, is going to be something we're going to have to tax citizens for. This would be something we have to earmark it. So we earmarked it. That's all.
Yeah.
We just earmarked it.
Let me mention one other principle, which we had a discussion.
We should, by the way, we should borrow money until it gets expensive. I'm all for it.
We had a good discussion with our auditors. It wasn't the audit committee, John. It was the auditors that said, if you want to move to the general fund because you lost revenues, and we did lose revenues, right?
Right.
By doing that, you take off the ARPA restrictions. So if you want to use some money for something that is not permitted by the ARPA parameters, you can wash it through the general fund in order to spend it on something that is not ARPA related. If you want to do that, it's just a way of.
Right. I think the committee felt that we wanted to have a little bit more control.
Well, again, it's a question of what you're trying to achieve. I mean, there may be some things you say, gee, we'd like to do that. It's a nice to have, but it's kind of a
Right.
stretch in terms of whether it's ARPA.
Right. Right.
But I do think the sewer and the infrastructure thing is classically something we ought to be
Well,
addressing.
yeah. And I couldn't agree more. I wanted to add that because it's.
Darien, as I may have said before, is Darien is taking a big chunk of their funds to address their flooding issues. Because
That's why I think, go ahead, Mark. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that was something I'd add right now, and I'd press Tiger on, probably not the time because, it's fresh to everyone's mind now. But if there's any way to pull projects forward where, we're not capping anyone at the end through budget season saying, oh, well, we're going to do it at this pace because we're capping ourselves. I want to get rid of that. I want to say we have areas of the infrastructure in this town that are antiquated and we need to pull them forward and spend the money. And if we're going to tax for it, we should. And if we got the money through ARPA, we should spend it.
Yeah, this is the opportunity to bring those projects forward now.
Right. Another example, Wilton is going to take 1.2 million of their ARPA funds and put it toward their pistol training range.
Mhm.
Right. So that in their case, they have a town meeting form of government, and the first select woman is making the allocations, and no one else is arguing with their allocations. So different towns are doing it different ways.
Well, there's
one of the things we talked about in the committee meeting actually for quite a while was should we spend money on studies of things we don't know whether we've got a problem with the infrastructure or not, which is very similar to what part of the sewer stuff is, but it's what part of the Wi-Fi stuff is as well. Is we felt that we should be willing to spend money on professionals to get in here and say, what could we do to improve the position we've got? Or do we even need to improve the position? Maybe we're fine.
We've been working, the Technology Advisory Committee has been working with Tucker and me for the past 6 months, actually since the storm when was the storm? You're confused by all the storms.
August? Which one? He said
Well, which one, Henry or?
And so I'll give you an example. Verizon has gone in and put fiber all over Wilton.
Right.
Okay. We have Altice as our main provider, or one of our two. We have Optimum and we have Frontier, which is still in 45% of the town for basic internet service or their content if you want to buy it. Both are weak sisters in terms of partner in terms of providing good service. Altice is frustrating the heck out of everybody, right? And they have the capability. They've wired most of the town, but they're not delivering the service in terms of hookups.
They're trying not to sell it.
Our objective is to make them perform better.
Mhm.
And by the way, we're not the only town complaining about Altice. It's all over the area on Long Island and Jersey. Everybody who has Altice is complaining about it. So, but Verizon's not going to come into New Canaan like they are Wilton,
right? Because
we're already wired with competitors. So,
well, the only thing I'm saying is spending part of this money on studies to figure out what we should go to as part of the infrastructure is an important place to spend part of it. And the 50,000 for Wi-Fi is part of that. That was more a tip our hat to. We can't tell you what to do, but boy, we'd sure be welcome if you came in and wanted to spend $200,000 on a huge study that would take us forward 5 years in our communication capability in town.
I'm not sure that's something we should talk about that. I'm not sure it's something we need to do. But when we looked at doing Wi-Fi for downtown, public Wi-Fi downtown, at the time was a nice to have. We said, who's going to fund it? We talked to the community foundation.
I think it'd be useful if we, and maybe we know all this stuff, but what is the infrastructure that would help us fill all of the offices? that brings the other folks into town in the second floors
Hmm.
as opposed to, right? I mean, I know when we did it at Rangeley Capital, we had to build it all ourselves. We had to go to all the different suppliers and figure out how to get internet that had backup, that had 2 times a backup, et cetera. And there was just no flexibility, right? I mean, do it yourself or go to Greenwich, go someplace else, and
That's a
that's
fair
fine.
point. That's,
That's what I'm
Really,
trying to
Greenwich-
talk about.
Greenwich has more capability than New Canaan or Wilton or Darien does. They focus on the business centers first.
Yeah.
They look at us
And-
as a small.
By the way, I mean, the offices here are, half as expensive, 2/3, 30-40% off what they are in Greenwich. So it's worth it, but it would be nice if we had the same infrastructure and everybody wanted to move here. That's all.
I think the idea of doing a study, to go back to Sven's idea, if there is a need for early daycare, that maybe is something you want to study and find out, is there a
Understand.
need? Is there from what age to what age?
In
And-
other towns, that need has been met by private industry.
Right. Well, here's the second half of my comment.
Yeah.
So if maybe there's organizations out there that already know there's a need,
Yeah.
can they be, putting in for a grant to start up? Like, are there limitations? I know it says not non-recurring, but maybe organizations don't realize that they could actually apply for this grant and actually start some more spaces for daycare or early care.
Yeah. There's actually discussion going on with a group to do a new daycare in town, very close to the train station.
So if you
But
need,
that would
if
be
you
a
need
private-
early childcare,
Yeah.
Send an email to the town council and that'll be our survey.
Wasn't there a survey or
That's a good
about
idea.
3 years ago when there was talk about nature center possibly having infant care? Wasn't there
Yeah,
some
there still is.
information from
Well,
that?
again, the idea with the YMCA has an existing program. It's
But, yeah.
easier to expand an existing program with capacity than to build a new one, because it's highly regulated and you really have to have the space to be able to do it.
I just don't think there's
Both
sorry,
outdoor and indoor space. So
I don't think there's any need for a survey. There is a tremendous need for that, for call it daycare. I mean, my wife and I spent thousands every month for many years. And our options were not in this town. I was in Stanford, there was Bright Beginnings and all these other ones. And especially now we have a lot more dual income families, a lot of people working, and people are returning to the offices despite a lot of people not wanting to go. But believe me, I'm on the road. The roads are packed like you wouldn't believe. There's a tremendous bursting need for it in this town. But the issue is it's really going to be solved, I think, privately. That's just my opinion, because
partly, yeah.
it's
Has to
so expensive to start up a daycare, and the insurance is astronomically high, and the liability, as you can imagine, for having the care of 20, 30 children, especially if you're paying 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 a head.
the
It's
town of New
profitable.
Canaan
but-
operates a daycare center.
Yeah, no, right.
But it's
So-
tiny.
Right. It's
Services a
It's-
couple hundred kids.
and there's
Because of
huge,
different times of
and
the
I
day.
know there's
Yeah.
huge demand for even more space. So that's, to the extent I think town council can play a role on the public side, great. But I think we need to make it the town needs to make it extremely attractive to bring in a private operator.
Exactly.
Having the space for.
Like giving them Irwin Park.
Yeah. Exactly.
One thing I wanted to ask about, which was a philosophical point you made, was to not fund operations. So it could be a public good. It could be straight square on the objectives of the Arpa money as it was designed for us. And yet you drew a line in the sand there and said, we don't favor operational money. Interestingly, I don't remember any of the 8 items that came to us from the selectmen being operational.
Right.
Where I heard operational asks were from some of the organizations like the New Canaan Historical Society and Museum saying, rather than spend it on a capital project, we'd rather you fund where we have success, which is October for Design. So they came and they evaluated capital versus operational, asked for operational, but you said the town council doesn't favor that.
Correct.
It doesn't mean you won't get a request.
You won't, I just think we don't want to support on the operations of an organization that I think we all agreed on.
So if I was one of them listening to this meeting, I would say, okay, I need to recast my request.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's think philosophically here. If an organization has a deficit and we fill the gap, but what happens if it doesn't get filled next year? We don't want to then be the lifeline for them for the next year. So you
Right.
have to think about the world has changed. We can't, certain things will change permanently from COVID and we can't be there to support it. This, we're just trying to.
But if we
stimulate
put
the
a
economy.
roof on the building so that the building can stay open
That's a
and
different.
charge admission, then we feel good.
Well, this may also inform the budget process, for example, the Live New Canaan thing, right? Now that they gotten themselves established, but they need ongoing support. And it really is a valuable addition to the town. That the same thing with the counselor at Saks. The superintendent agreed to provide the first year, but that's going to be an ongoing need in the future.
Right, that should be that should be a tax, that should be through taxation. That's what taxes are for.
And Mark, we spoke about maybe we would just recommend to the Board of Selectmen to put some of these things in the
Sure.
budget.
Sure.
Yes, I think
exactly.
If you feel strongly, or if the infrastructure is not meeting the needs of the town,
right?
You know what? Maybe we should think about spending more money.
Right.
Instead of capping ourselves every year.
I just wanted to shine a light on this because I know that they're watching this and they're trying to understand the mind of the town council. So I wanted to explain that it's not a bad idea. It's just that it needs to be that we prefer capital projects because that have a beginning and an end. Got it.
John, just to put a fine point on it, I think it is to fund not ongoing expense, but to be a kickoff. If you want to put a new program in place, right, we'll fund the first year, you're going to fund the next one. I mean, that's very much what the New Canaan Community Foundation does. We'll fund the first year of this project, but you foresee that you're going to be able to take it on and keep it going, right? And so that's very similar to capital, right? It's we're giving you enough to get going.
Right.
And so I wouldn't say we want to turn that down. We want to turn down something, very much like Mark said, we want to turn down something that you got a problem that you don't know how to solve and you want us to solve it for 2 years, then we're going to have a problem. That's not what we want.
Early phase investments.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Okay. I get it. I have no further questions. Do you? Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Kevin. Nice guy. Town council rules. Penny Young. I'll just
Really,
hand it
another
over.
exciting topic.
Well,
You get to pick what you're known for, Penny.
Sorry. I'll have to be
You
careful
know,
about raising my hand.
The US Senate is debating their rules like filibuster right now, and it's headline news. So it depends, I guess, what rules you're going to change, because it could become a
Well,
very big deal.
Okay, all I can say is that we had an extensive discussion last month, right? And so what is in your tablet is the copy of the rules that still has the proposed changes in it. I had asked the lawyer to send me a copy because only he can accept his changes. I can't accept them. So if you can use your imagination, and everything that is written that you see in red or the lawyer's additions, those are what we had agreed we would accept.
Do you want to read to us out loud a motion to? Can you
But I
craft
have
a
one
motion?
more
Okay.
clarifier on that. We had discussed under meetings, section 1, the introduction of an exception being made for a supermajority vote of the council for someone not being here present. In the accepted copy that I have seen but didn't make it to your tablet,
I actually just added it. It should
it's
be
just
on-
now there.
It was, I added it this afternoon. You should have it now. You should usually have 2 copies, but at any rate. it's got
Okay,
it up on
at
the
any
screen.
rate, the lawyer has said that we cannot put that into our rules right now because of the governor's mandate for attendance and hybrid attendance and meetings and all that sort of stuff. So he said, if you want that put into your rules, take it out right now. And then after the governor's rules for attendance and virtual and presence and all that sort of stuff is not in effect, you can put them back in.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I will then move that we accept all of the changes that we had discussed last time, taking out that one sentence clarifier.
Are they sufficiently small lists that you could identify them to us now so that
Oh,
it's real
geez.
clear what we're voting on?
Oh,
Yes.
no, I've got it right here. Essentially, what the major additions or the changes are in the first article, the addition of section 18, right? Which is the establishment of a public-private partnership agreement between the new New Canaan Library and the town of New Canaan, approved by the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the Town Council, and signed in October of 21. The chairman of the Town Council shall nominate 2 members of the library to the library's Board of Trustees. The individuals nominated as additional town trustees will be subject to approval by the library in the same manner it conducts when approving any new trustee. The additional trustees will be entitled to vote and will be counted for purposes of a quorum. The nominee shall not be an elected official, and the trustees shall report to the town council at least semi-annually. Okay, so that was the addition. The other changes that occur are all of the ones that the lawyer put in to accommodate the COVID regulations coming out of Hartford for meetings, right?
Mhm.
And then we change the date at the end to be today's date that it would be effective by.
So Penny's made a motion. Do I have a second? I second that motion. Now we have a discussion. Any discussion on these proposed changes?
Did it, Penny, does it have term limits in terms of how many years they represent the town council for? Is it a 2-year term or a 4-year term?
Article 18.
Who's represent, what, the
libra-
trustees in the
Library
library?
terms are 3 years,
Right. But is that going,
at the end of which the town council will nominate, could nominate the person again if they want, or somebody else, but you'll go through the process every 3 years.
You go by the library's bylaws.
okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay,
Okay.
and I did get into the bylaws. The time that this is in their bylaws, which is during the duration of the agreement, which is 25 years. Because I had suggested in perpetuity so that you couldn't have, down the line, the Board of Trustees saying that it doesn't work having a trustee or 2 trustees and bylaw it out. So it cannot change for the duration of the agreement with the town.
So you saw the modified library?
It is in their bylaws. I have seen it.
Okay.
Right. And Steve Carl and I met with the library and
You're going.
and John, right.
Once we approve this, it will be filed with the town clerk in the minutes. Should we attach a copy of the bylaws for the library just to coordinate
You're public.
as an attachment to the minutes?
Can, right.
Can,
I
by
would think
reference.
so. Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, we're in discussion. Any other discussion? All in favor? It looks unanimous.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Thank
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's a lot of work. A lot of
Thank
revisions.
you.
Yeah, it's a lot of thank yous too. She's done that. How many times have you done that, Penny?
Who's counting?
More than twice.
Okay, Linda, we still have money in the bank?
We got a lot of money in the bank.
I did want to give you just a couple of updates. You have the financials in front of you. Just wanted to highlight one. In the FY21 actual, these are unaudited numbers, but the ending balance is in the fund, in the general fund, is 29.4 million, which is about 19% of overall expenditures, and the unassigned fund balance should end up at about 17% of expenditures. You recall that the guidance from the Board of Finance is at about 10% fund balance, and the GFOA is 16%. So to answer the question, we are in good shape. But I did want to give you just a couple of updates on some projects that are going on. Kevin did mention that in November, we will be bringing you a bond issue for $20 million, which will include the 10 million for the library, in addition to some other projects that have already been authorized and approved.
What did our last bond pay?
It was under 2%.
It was under 2%.
Linda, I'm sorry, but don't we usually bond after we spend the money?
After you approve the
It depends on
project.
project. So for example, for the roof project is a good example where we knew the roof was going to be done in 3 months. It has a definite start, a definite end date. So for that type of project, we typically just bond if we're going out for bonding rather than wait, because we know we're going to spend the money relatively quickly.
But our agreement with the library is that they would spend the first 10 and then we would match the funds.
Yes,
Is
so
it
they're
changing?
coming, and that's a good point. So of the 10, they're already coming for a $6 million draw of the 10. And so that 6 is already accounted for. And in short time, we will be drawing down on the additional 4. And since we're going out in November and we're not going to go out again until the summer, it's probably just in terms of cost savings, we may as well just borrow the funds now.
Okay.
Keep them and then they can draw from that.
Definitely borrow
Okay.
funds now.
Who knows where
Yeah.
rates are going?
Yeah,
You're
borrow
locking
now.
it, you're locking it up now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's-
Inflation seems to be running a little hot.
Yeah.
So we have that bond issue coming up, and so it'll come before you for approval once we're done with the itemized list of projects that are included. We have started the transition process of banking with JP Morgan Chase. So we're doing weekly meetings with them. We hope to have that process completed around January, February, have that transition completed. I mentioned the audit
From whom, from what?
from Webster to JP Morgan. So we hope we started that transition and we should be complete by February. And then we typically have a lag with the tax collections account because of when the taxes are collected. So that account will transfer over in July.
Will JP Morgan be providing any services to come and pick up monies for deposit, or we will still be using Brinks or whoever it is we use?
We're evaluating that because right now there isn't a lot of money that Brinks picks up. It's a free service, it's a free service provided by the bank, so we don't really pay for it. So to the
Okay.
extent that we have some cash that needs to be picked up, we have occasional tax payments that are made. But we did transition a lot of the big tax payments with Bankwell. If you recall, due to COVID, we weren't having people come to City Hall. So we had dropped a lot of the cash that comes into Town Hall. Most of the cash in Town Hall now is just revenues taken from the parking meters that is housed in-house, and then so there isn't a lot of pickup happening. In December, you will be receiving the audit for approval. So the audit is ongoing now. They presented to the Audit Committee. Audit Committee met, I believe it was last week. Everything is going well. Internal controls, they reported that internal controls, nothing alarming. There's nothing of concern, but more is just tracking the bookings of the funds. This year, because of Arpa and CARES Act monies that we got from the state with COVID, there's some additional reporting on those. And so they're doing some additional work on that. And then the last thing I wanted to update was budget development for fiscal year 23 was discussed at the Board of Finance last week. Their budget guidance committee is going to start reviewing some numbers, and we're reviewing some numbers with Kevin, looking at the 5-year capital as well. And so we should get guidance from the Board of Finance in November, and that'll kickstart the budget process. We'll be meeting again with the departments and just working on the schedule. That's where we are. And then the last thing I did want to point out, Mark, we were talking about allocation of the Arpa funds. And so one of the things that we discussed with the auditor too is, suppose we identified $4 million in lost revenue. That does not necessarily mean that the $4 million goes into the general fund. It just means that of the money we got, $4 million is compensating us for lost revenue, but it can still be allocated within the grant fund. What that does, it reduces all the other restrictions because you've already met the restrictions. $4 million is lost revenue. We've tested. And therefore, for example, maybe daycare doesn't qualify under the 5 ARPA rules, but now you have your own money. You've already met the restrictions. You could fund something like that.
Got it.
Without going into the general fund.
Got it.
And so it gives you a bit more flexibility if you were to identify X number of dollars is lost revenue without it going into the general fund.
The monies we've received so far are in the grant fund, is that?
Yes, so all the monies are in the grant fund. We have.
Linda, can you just comment for a minute on how the Board of Education ARPA funds are being dealt with? I mean, is this 2.8, does that include their $1 million or whatever piece of that is? Who's keeping track of that?
No, so they have a separate process. Those are ran through grants. I think there's early secondary ESSA grant is where the ARPA funds are flowing into. They received about $1 million outside of the 6 million that we're receiving. But those are reported separately. They're managed separately through the Board of Ed, separate from the general fund, but they are administered through the state. And so they have a state reporting requirements. They also have a series of restrictions like we do on what they could use.
And they're dealing, so with respect to the financial statements that you're signing, right, and that we're approving, there's now a piece outside of that that is not your responsibility. It's the Board of Education. Is it our responsibility?
They manage it, but they are part of the books because we report on all grants that come to the town and through the Board of Ed. So there's a schedule of grants. So we would see, I mean, the auditors would check the monies that came in and how they were spent. So all of their funds are part of our town audit, even the grant funds.
And so when you sign this and say all the ARPA funds are being managed properly, they are being managed properly. You know that. They're doing it in some way, shape, or form.
But yes.
Well, they're going to ask you to sign it, right? Because you signed for all of us.
I will sign for the ones that flow through the town.
Yeah,
The
no,
ones that they're
enough.
getting through the state, they'll be signing them. The Board of Ed.
But they'll show up on their accounting when
It'll
they
show
give
up on their
us.
account.
It'll show up in our budget, et cetera, et
They
cetera.
would have
It
to
would
go
show
through
up
the
in our
testing of
budget.
those funds.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
just like the ARPA funds will.
it's a line item after the budget.
Okay, all right, I see.
It's budget plus
Got it, got
grants.
it.
Okay,
Got it.
I'm just curious, because we never seem to discuss any of that, right?
Well, so that's a good question, Richard. Will the Board of Ed discuss that in a public setting so that it's?
Correct, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
So
I think they should.
I would imagine that they would. I mean, it highlights what the money's being used for, and it's a good chance for them to be totally transparent, which they have been. So I would imagine at a future Board of Ed meeting, you'd hear where those funds are going. And if there isn't that opportunity, we can ask that during the budget season too. So
Well, and we can depend upon our liaisons now
yeah, to get
to
ahead.
be
Yeah.
raising that question.
Well, I did the other day. I sent Rich an email. I didn't bring it with me, but they have discussed the use of the ESSER grants in public Board of Ed meetings. I don't remember if they've had a comprehensive summary, but the list is entirely different from our normal ARPA list. The application that they have to make is purely educational purposes, and remedial education it would be an example. People that have a learning shortfall, especially special ed categories that they've allocated to. But I don't know if they've made a public summary of the entire amount. Most of it's well along, if not done. I think some of their money had to be allocated by the end of June, and the rest of it by the end of the year. So they don't have the kind of long-term planning frame that we have. But I will find out if they're going to summarize that.
Did
They-
any
they
of it
did-
go toward a planetarium? that they
No,
were asking for?
no planetarium.
They did send the statement of accounts, and it does include offsets and outside support. So, but there's no detail. So I think we should probably find out.
Well, that's one of the things that they discussed. It was discussed last night during the debate about that educational shortfall and how the Board of Ed's really committed to finding and identifying any of the children that have, suffered from COVID. So that would be a really good, I would think, a great use of those funds to bring anybody up to speed in terms of those that may have fallen behind.
It was an interesting segment of the debate because the question, as I understood it, was, is there a learning deficit from wearing masks? And that was the answer. But of course, the greater learning deficits are in other districts where kids weren't able to go to school.
Yeah.
That's where, the psychological deficit, the problem now of I think there's been a recent statewide concern about mental health of students. And that's not very much of that is from masks. That's from not being in school at all. So
I think it was the speech issues when you're trying to teach someone with speech issues and they're wearing a mask. I think
that's an element, right? But I think that.
Any further
perspective?
Questions for Linda?
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
It's been a pleasure for all these years. Thank you, Clark.
Meeting schedule, approval of the council meeting schedule for calendar year 2022. Is that you, Tucker?
You have it on your.
Has everybody read it? Somebody want to make a motion that we approve?
So moved.
Okay, so Mark, seconded by Tom. Discussion on the meeting schedule? Okay, all in favor? It's approved. Okay, and now committee reports. See, it's 9 o'clock. I got a target and I never seem to make that target. Depends on how fast we go through these. Steve, Carl, Mark, go ahead.
We don't have anything on the bylaw and ordinance
All right.
right now. So
Education, Tom's already given his report.
Basically, that's the most important things.
Well, I'll add to what you said, because that was part of their committee that they created, the School Start Time Implementation Committee, which just met on the 14th, and that's public, which is nice because people were invited to it. I know St. A's, we asked that they get invited because they have an after-school program, and what they discussed at this meeting was this program that Tom mentioned, bringing in a company that's called, it's like an after-school program that it's from Chicago. They actually had people from Chicago come and present on it, and it's a K-8 or pre-K through 8 program called Right at School. So they work hand in hand with the teachers and the curriculum, and kind of, it sounds almost like an extended school because they have a program that's social emotional instruction, but it's supposed to be fun. And it would run after school. So that was the first meeting. They just presented this idea.
What is the latest on school start time
Oh, and they
implementation?
paused that. They're not going to,
That's what I heard.
yeah.
Did they-
So that,
anything new on that?
well, the reason they paused it, so they can kind of pull together more groups and sort of see where the problems are, what they'll have to address, and hopefully then roll it out smoother in the fall.
So it's a 6-month pause, not an indefinite
Well, they didn't
pause.
really, yeah, it's not indefinite.
It's a
Oh,
6
I
month.
heard they did a survey at the high school. I don't know if anyone has kids at the high school, but they sent out a very quick, are you in favor? Do you have anyone at the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just a quick survey. Are you in favor of changing the start time? So I don't know what the results were.
You mean
So-
changing the implementation date? Is that what they were asking?
I think it was the start times.
The start
in
time.
general.
The hour.
It was almost like it went back a little bit, like they were asking the kids again,
Wow.
do you want this? So
I wouldn't ask that question.
So that's the big news. That there's an athletic update, and that's about it.
Finance, government, Mark, Rich.
I think I'm
I'm
done.
Talked out?
Talked out.
Okay. Health and Human Services, Penny.
I unfortunately was not able to attend the meeting, and my trusted partner Liz here's not here tonight.
Infrastructure, Utilities, Christina and Penny.
There isn't anything at the moment because we haven't had a meeting. Nothing's going on. It's pre-budget season.
Okay, Land Use, Robin and Maria.
Real quick with the conservation, Conservation Commission is interested in taking a townwide survey of New Canaan's tree coverage. They're basing this on the Western Massachusetts survey they recently did, looking to possibly use that format. Talked about the town budget of $400,000 for trimming and removing trees, but they would like to see more money added into the budget to replace those trees. Looking to promote the Green Link, and they have a program coming up November 15th on the spotted lanternfly that's now been located in Fairfield County. And then Parks and Rec, they're installing, Parks and Rec approved new softball batting cages by the softball fields, which will be paid for by the New Canaan softball program. They've had a very good season. They've saved money, so they'll be paying for those. John Howe is looking into the Waveney Adult Fitness area. It needs an update. The current equipment is towards the end of the lifespan, so they're looking to have money approved for the playground to go next to it for July 22. And if so, the installation would be late fall 22 and finishing in spring of 23. The budget number for all of that would be $495,000. However, that was from last year. He needs to go over those numbers again. Pickleball's doing great. The tennis courts at the high school resurfaced and they put down new base surface. They're still waiting, I think, on the 3 coats of paint. There was the FCX champion or country championship today at Waveney. Bathrooms at the Paddlehead are currently closed. There was a problem with the pipe to the septic. It's 80 years old. Palladino Septic's working on it right now. That's about it. And tonight, if anyone's interested, I believe they're still having the fundraiser at White Buffalo for the ice rink.
Ooh.
To raise money for
Fun.
that.
What time?
Now,
8 till 10. I know School of Rock is there, but it's now.
You hear that, all you listeners? White Buffalo, right after the meeting.
I actually have it.
2 questions for Robin.
Mhm.
Actually, 1 comment. The comment is, I read today about a race to raise awareness of the Green Link. I think that's a great idea.
So it was just brought up. What it is Darien Land Trust has to promote all their land trust properties. They have a 10K. It's a virtual. You sign up, and they have a QR code on some signs, and you can for prizes. So the thought is, I'm going to be walking through with someone next week from Land Trust, so to try to promote the Green Link. Maybe have something on Earth Day, like see if we can have a race or just a family walk or something. But then maybe loop in Chamber because you go through town. To do that. So that's just something their Conservation Commission would, I guess, sponsor.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. Hopefully we get that kicked off. The other thing that, and I'm sure the town is looking at this, but Kevin's here tonight, but this past Sunday we had caffeine and carburetors at Waveney, and I imagine there's some sort of, the Park and Rec will be looking at it, but there's got to be some sort of after meeting to talk about the impacts on the park and neighborhoods surrounding it, because it was huge. It was a record-breaking event, but it also
8,000 people.
It also on a Sunday morning in New Canaan, it was not a normal Sunday morning in New Canaan. So we're gonna have to look at that. So
yeah, it was. If you went to the park though later the afternoon, it looked like nothing had happened.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it did look great afterwards, but I mean during that time, Mike and I live over in that area, but I've had a few neighbors ask me like, okay, what exactly just happened? So
Was traffic bad on South Avenue?
that is an understatement.
Exploded.
I mean, it's guys, until you see pictures and aerial pictures, you won't believe what happened.
Did you take aerial pictures?
No, there's
I've got a movie that I took in the
got his
park.
drone.
Afterwards.
It's remarkable, but it was a tri-state event. I mean, it was massive. So.
Did it impact the center of town, like
Well,
restaurants?
that's the main.
There was
I'm
nobody
sure.
downtown.
No, that's not true.
No, so-
Oh my God, town was packed Sunday, as soon as it was over. I mean, you
As
could
soon as
get-
it was over.
Yeah.
Yeah, packed.
Yeah, so that's really the analysis is how did we do in town? How did the park go? But I think we'd all like to hear a little bit more about it because we've got to report back to the the folks who live in that area and let them know what's going on. So.
We need to get you a helicopter to be able to leave your house and come into the center. of
Well, I mean,
town.
it's, you know, hey, listen, it's a great event. I mean, I'm a car guy, right? I mean, it was amazing, but you know, you got to see some of these pictures. I mean, it was Woodstock. It's pretty wild.
I think it was the largest. I have no data, but
Yeah.
it was enormous this year.
Yeah,
It was
three
huge.
times what we were used to do like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How many people did they think? There were
8,000.
8,000?
If we charge admission to the park, then that would pay for the ice rink.
Yeah. So that's, you know, it's just putting it out there as something we should be taking a look at. So anyway.
Yeah, in all, yeah, I would like to point out, I mean, we as the town council are supposed to wring our hands and be concerned about the planning and all that, but I would like to thank Doug. I would like to thank CERT for, you know, keeping 8,000 people that they couldn't have anticipated, you know, happily moving, safe, you know, it was a great event. I do think you're right, though, as it has grown and will continue to grow, we should probably reach out to start planning properly with Doug as his partner. It's a great and recognize it's a great thing for the town. And we want it to continue to be a great thing for the town. And if he needs our help to make it great.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where there's assistance that's needed. I mean, you know, there were so many cars in that area, like Lapham had cars on both sides of the road. And, you know, it would probably be pretty impossible to get a fire truck through there, I would think so. I
Yeah, the
don't know.
special events committee, which approved that, has a meeting scheduled. I'm not sure exactly the day. It should be
Great. So that's great.
Is it bigger than the 4th of July?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. I mean, we had, you know, so I live behind the Y. There was cars literally all over the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was
terrible.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, actually. I mean, during the fireworks, Fred Tierney comes out and puts signs up, no parking, but there were bumper to bumper cars all the way from Conrad down to Gertie's, all the way down Whiffletree. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I've never seen anything.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
high school parking was filled, the pool parking was filled up, the paddle courts, it was.
South, people were walking and
People
some
were-
guys were telling me that they parked at Saks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the you know, this committee, I'm sure will break it down with, you know, there's other uses of the park too. So we've got to be cognizant of that too.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. It was amazing. I mean, it was really amazing to see. So, but anyway.
There's the grown-up side of this and the not so grown-up side of this. You know?
Yeah.
No, it was pretty cool.
It's
I'll
pretty
show you-
cool.
Did you go? I've got.
No,
I'll
my
show you
wife
the
did.
movie right after.
Yeah.
this.
Yes, it was amazing.
I have one more addition. Everybody really, when you have an opportunity, go over and look at the work that's been done on Waveney House. The handicapped entrance into the portico, the side porch there is really very, very attractive. I mean, it exceeds my wildest expectations. The fire escape is now in place. And it's not a little rickety fire escape. It's an entrance and exit to the second floor, actually, if you know, from a stability standpoint. And the sloped area from the loge into the terrace. I mean, it's really very, very nicely done. So,
Went great.
yeah,
I was more than pleasantly surprised.
yeah.
I was just happy.
The final word, Mike, public safety.
So on police, Kevin gave the update on the building committee. It's fairly accurate. Not just kidding, very accurate. So that's up to date. Couple of points for the police. I noticed the statistic that 60% increase in car thefts this year over last year. So the chief is really pushing the public awareness on, you know, take your keys out of your car, lock it. Don't leave, you know, a bag of cash on the front seat. Don't make it an attractive target. So I think anyone listening out there, please keep up with trying to keep our cars safe. There was the barricades and barriers that are on Elm and Forest. That was the subject of some discussion at the last commission meeting, and I think as of October 30th, Forest Street, the barricades are being removed unless,
Already come down.
oh, it has come down already.
They-
Okay.
They all agreed to have them come down, so they're already down.
Okay. And then Elm, I think they're going to continue to look at it. There's a state law.
Bump outs are completed, the work
Yeah.
on the bump outs are completed, which is this fall.
Okay, right, great. So that was just something I found interesting. On fire, we discussed the fire contract, so that's going to get settled since the membership approved it, and it looks like we've approved it. The Rescue 5 truck, I think, is post paint inspections, Van, is that right? And,
Yeah, they're working on configuring the shelves. Some good news there is that Whalen, the people who make the electronic sirens and all the flashing lights and stuff, want to give us their equipment for free, provided that they're allowed to come down and take promotional pictures of it.
Nice.
You know, it won't leave town, but it'll be there. So everybody seems to think that that sounds like a deal and a half.
How much savings is that?
I couldn't tell you
Okay.
offhand. I wouldn't want to quote you a number because, the number of lights that go on trucks these days has gotten a lot bigger than back when I used to do them. Anyway, yeah, Jack Hennessy's last day is the end of the month, 15 years of good work. Tony Ryan's last day is November 1st. Lieutenant Ryan will be passing out, and Chris Isaacs will be graduating from fire school on the 10th of December. And, that's all I know.
there's one other larger issue I want to just hit quickly, because I know it kind of dovetails with the ARPA discussion. It's great that the Board of Ed and there's a lot of movement on expediting bonus payments to the teachers, which is fantastic. I think that just equally as much, and I know it's been discussed, a bonus payout for, on the town side, and especially our first responders, like I've spoken to some in that community, and they're kind of dispirited that, there's no one who's been really pushing that issue more on a higher visibility level. It looks like the teacher bonuses will go through on an expedited track. And I urge all of us sitting here to really consider what we can do to bring that forward just as quick as the issue on the teacher bonus payout. Our first responders, they didn't get to sit home and work remote, and they come to work every day and make sure that we're safe, fires get responded to, crimes get responded to, all sorts of calls get responded to. Our careers, our volunteers, and growing up in a law enforcement family, I know what it's like to see your dad in the morning, leave, put his gun on, and you don't know if he's coming home that night. So our guys came in with the added threat, and women with the added threat of a virus. And I really, really, really urge the first selectman, the Board of Finance, and this body to put these men and women up front. And I'd like to have a parity in the bonus that the Board of Ed is getting, that the teachers are getting. I think they're just as equally as important and done just as a fantastic job of really being brave and courageous. The teachers, the firemen, the EMS, the police. I mean, Tigers people too, they came in, our roads, everything was moving along. So I urge us all that with all of our priorities that we're considering here, that we expedite that, just as the Board of Ed is doing a great job in expediting bonus payouts to all of their teachers.
Can I make a suggestion that when we vote in November, that it's all together?
Oh, yeah, excellent.
It was supposed to be on tonight's agenda, and because there was nobody explaining where it came from and why it was what it was, and why was it as small as it was, or why was it as large as it was, and where did it come from, and whether it was ARPA or not ARPA, we decided to table that discussion till next month. So you'll have a chance to make your arguments directly to Todd, who's presenting to us, and you'll have your opportunity to ask Todd to bundle it if it doesn't come to us bundled.
Yeah.
You'll have your opportunity next month.
I
I
think-
just didn't think we were prepared to vote on it this month.
No, I agree. I just, to Mike's point, because I agree, it should be all together so that we send the message, the right message.
I agree.
And I would just say, I agree with Mike.
You would agree?
He does.
So Who would put the number together for the rest of it?
HR.
Yeah. It'd be nice if we just had a nice clean package ready for us next month, right?
Yeah, I agree.
The whole thing.
EMS wouldn't get anything though, would they?
Why not?
Oh, EMS
Well,
should
the
be.
Well, just.
The
how does-
volunteers should be included.
Yeah, all
Okay.
volunteers, they are as equally as
I agree.
important.
Yeah, we just,
I-
No, I'm not saying that, you're not saying that.
It's going to do wonders for recruitment.
Yeah. Just Mark and I had a quick update on the library. You know, we don't appear on this list, but we're on the building committee. We meet every Friday morning again. We did get that MOU signed.
Yeah.
Kevin just signed it this week.
MOU signed.
MOU signed. We're just talking about the building committee. So the MOU was signed this week, and Board of Finance actually took up for a few minutes the additional funds that we're talking about, but the GMP has to come back, and I understand the GMP is back or going to be there soon. So that'll be the next step in this, but there's no rush, as we talked about at the Board of Finance meeting. So I think that's it. The library is
What does
working.
GMP stand for?
Guaranteed maximum price
Got it.
of the project. So that's the
And there was no discussion of the 1913?
they did at the last meeting, we got into the different configurations of the 1913 preservation, and they're starting to formulate the different looks that they'll bring to P&Z. So that's in the works, and
Any
they
idea
still-
what month that'll happen?
well, it's 120 days, so it has to happen. I think their plan is December, Mark, was it, or early
I believe
December? Yeah,
that's
early
correct.
December, late November, early December. So stay tuned for that. Some of the early indications look, they're really nice. I think, but it's up to planning and zoning and to see what's what. And the plans will go in front of that body, and then there'll be some big discussions, I'm sure. So I wish you were going to be here for that.
I'll be watching on channel 79. Okay, anything further?
Mention of Dave
Yeah.
Hunt getting honored on Friday, the 22nd. He's the gridiron fall guy. We haven't been able to really talk about it too much because we haven't been able to have a gridiron guy in a while. But Dave's 2 years in the making and well deserved. So
22nd at the country club?
it's a country club. Yeah,
2 nights?
that's one night.
One night.
Dave,
One night only.
obviously, this council is very in debt to Dave because we recruited him to be on the charter revision committee. And he eventually, we told him that it wasn't going to be a big commitment, and then he ended up chairing.
We ended up going to court.
Yeah, so Dave's going straight up for that one. But anyway, I thought I'd mention that because he's a great guy.
We'll see you there
October
Friday.
22nd?
It's coming up, yeah, October 22nd.
Registration is closed though, we maxed.
Oh, registration is closed. Popular guy.
Anything further?
We actually did have a couple of words to say. We've got some folks leaving here, so I don't know, Mark, you want to
I
start?
mean, we'll start down on this end here. I jotted them down, so pardon me for reading them. If you've lived in New Canaan long enough, as I have, I think now 15 years, you realize that the greatness of this town goes way beyond the top-notch schools, wonderful open spaces, and the downtown charm. It's the countless public servants like Sven England who dedicate their time to serving the greater good. Sven exemplifies what it means to tirelessly give back to a community he has spent a lifetime in. After many years of service and many more as a firefighter, Sven is stepping away from the town council, but his legacy is firmly intact. His words are often brief and to the point, but what makes Sven such a perfect public servant comes down to one thing. He isn't out for himself or to push his agenda. He simply cares about this town, every resident, the history of it, the future, and its success. I've enjoyed my 2 years on the town council working with Sven. He is calm and collected, yet outspoken when he has to be passionate. He works super hard, spends countless hours in this building to everyone's benefit. These are great lessons for anyone new to public service or looking to get involved. To the public, if you're looking for a reason to get involved in this town and feel like it's time to give back, talk to Sven England. I promise you it is time well spent. Sven, thank you for everything you've done for this town and will continue to do in some capacity. I hope Rita doesn't mind your extra free time as well. Sven, from the bottom of my heart and from everyone's heart, thank you very much.
Nice.
Thank you all. You know, I respect you very deeply, you know, and it means a lot coming from all of my colleagues here. For everybody else out there, you know, town isn't going to succeed unless we all help. And I encourage you to run for office, no matter what party or what your position on any of our town issues is. Please run. We need you.
Well done.
Next.
Next up.
All right, I'd like to say a few words about my friend Rich Townsend. He says, uh-oh. Kathy, you waited all this time? I hope I don't disappoint you. Actually, we began as adversaries, Rich and I, competing in the Republican caucus 4 years ago. I wasn't a very formidable adversary, as it turns out, getting only 605 votes to Rich's 942. He got far more votes than any other candidate in that caucus. Well, that was humbling. It was no surprise. Rich is widely respected in town, widely trusted, and he had 3 generations of charming Townsends helping to raise his banner high, including Kathy. Rich took his role very seriously, both as vice chairman, secretary, and various committees, but in particular, the ones I was aware of was the involvement I was aware of was the attending, was the Board of Education. Rich and I attended dozens of meetings. Rich scoured through the Board of Ed budget in detail, and we spent many hours in his family room raising questions and floating what ifs, and often talked by phone every day on budget policy and other matters. Rich was impeccably fair. He was and is just as interested in learning the value of the schools that the schools provided to the community as he was their cost. In addition, as all town members recall and appreciate, Rich prioritized the key issues in the entire town budget and brought them to us once a year so we could be guided through, the process, knowing what was important and what wasn't. During his term, an excited business opportunity arose, and suddenly Rich, the retiree, became Rich, the corporate deal maker. But he continued to take his town council role seriously throughout. That was a disappointing development for me because I didn't get to spend as much time in his living room talking about town policy. But he didn't drop the ball on his involvement in the town council. Rich is charming, respectful, honest, open-minded, professional, and a good friend that we will all miss. Good luck, Rich.
I'll say anything, Rich?
I've thoroughly enjoyed the 4 years, and if I weren't so old, I might not be going.
Whoops.
So we wish you guys were staying. I mean, this is a giant hole right here. I mean, this is unbelievable. The years that you 3 have put in, and the contributions you've made to the council. It's just remarkable. So we are going to miss you. So my job is to give the send off. I didn't write it like that. You guys are excellent writers. I basically wrote a bunch of notes, and here we go. Because this is one of those things where you say, let me describe a guy to you, okay? He's a successful realtor and a commercial landlord. He's a 3rd generation New Canaanite. He's had board positions on the Outback, Teen Center, Rotary Club, Staying Put, New Canaan Land Trust. He's involved in St. A's. He's been on the ZBA. He was on the ZBA for 5 years. He was a baseball coach. He was a basketball coach. And he served in the U.S. military during Desert Storm. So this is a guy who you say, okay, he's got to have his boots hung up somewhere, and he's not doing anything anymore because he's exhausted. Well, now comes 2013, and this guy decides he's going to run for town council in New Canaan. And, the rest is history. As the chairman of this council, he was organized, always thoughtful. He's a great listener. He's a great communicator. I mean, how many emails do you think this guy has sent to this group in the past 4 years? Amazing. He's a mediator. He's inquisitive, almost too inquisitive. Holy smokes, is he inquisitive. but he's got a head for business, and that's really important. I mean, he's asked some unbelievable questions, not just in real estate, but in budget setting and expectations and goals. Some of the stuff that John has asked over the years has really paid dividends, and he's nonpartisan. He's never, ever taken a side, one side or the other on the political aisle. He's preached civility, but he's preached it and he's practiced civility every moment that he's done this. And I really take my hat off to that. There's one thing I wanted to highlight that happened during the COVID crisis that John did. And John and I had a conversation when this COVID hit, and we said, we're in trouble here. We have no ability to communicate as a town together. We have no ability. We have nothing set up to do that. How are we going to do this? You know, are we going to do some sort of call? The word Zoom hadn't even been in our lexicon.
Yeah, conference call.
Right, conference call. So John comes up with this idea of, well, why don't we have a townwide call at 4 o'clock? That's a pretty good idea. Maybe we'll have one. Well, he created this 4 o'clock call. It brought the community together in a way that we had never seen before at a time of need. He helped coordinate, connect, collaborate, and keep a cohesive feel to this town that felt completely isolated at the time. And that was a huge deal. That is a leader. And John, thank you for that. For several months, John's 4 p.m. call was all we had in this town, and it was a must-attend event.
Right.
And it really was an amazing moment for this town. These are some of my descriptions of John, the personal guy. He's unique, creative. He's a great dresser. And what a smile this guy has. When you meet him, the guy's always smiling. He's always positive. He's got a calm demeanor. He's fair, and he's very articulate. And, you know, he's a great leader. And I'm just going to wrap with a thank you to his family. I know what that's like to be away from your family for so long. He's got 4 beautiful kids, 4 successful kids. He did a great job raising them. And to Melissa, who says goodbye to this guy and lends him to us for all these years. That's a big deal. It's a lot of time away. So thank you, Melissa. So finally, John, you're an incredible chairman, a great leader, a champion, and above all else, a friend, and above all else, a friend of all things and a champion of New Canaan. And thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, the bottom of this council's heart. You have some big shoes to fill. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I know Liz isn't here, but I was just gonna say a few words. Unfortunately, Liz couldn't make it tonight to her last town council meeting. But I want to thank her for her service to the community. Liz's roots are deep in New Canaan, as well as her involvement in the community. One of Liz's first jobs when she was a teenager in New Canaan was assisting local residents who had been affected by polio. Her father had polio following the polio epidemic of '54. After graduating from New Canaan High School, Liz went off to Princeton and stayed in New Jersey until moving back into New Canaan in 2014. And then she ran for town council in 2017. But once back in New Canaan, you know, Liz started a company that helps support seniors for aging in place. But she also started volunteering right away. She was with Together Her Service Committee of the New Canaan YMCA. She serves as a therapeutic riding instructor in New Canaan Mounted Troop. And she's now currently on the Connecticut League of Women Voters Board, where she is vice president of voter services. And that's where she'll be directing a lot of her energy. So, you know, a big thank you to Liz for her service and commitment to our community and for coming back home.
I miss you guys, all 4 of you. We're gonna have some new faces, but big shoes to fill. So Liz, Rich, Sven, John. John, you gotta have the final word here. So sign us out.
Keep on doing. Just keep.
We're gonna miss all of you, but change is good.
Yeah.
Change is good. You guys are gonna be just fine. And we're not gonna be far away. So thank you for many great years. Thank you. You guys are great to work with. And I'm gonna miss you. All right, motion to adjourn. Oh. I think they're ready, Tucker. We are adjourned.
That's good.